Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear us? It looks like indeed you can hear us today. Welcome everyone. I am so excited to bring us back one last time for part 2 of Vampire the Masquerade with my good buddy Rick Wheeler. Before let's get into it, let's start with some openings right here. Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show by GMs for GMs, where we take the deep dive on some of our favorite systems, we crack them open, we see what makes them tick, and we do it delivering it to you so that you can run them just as good as we do. Now, today, same guest as I had last week. You know him, you love him. I've never met anyone that ever hated him. I have Rick Wheeler back to the show.
I need to introduce you to some particular people. But, well, thank you for having me again, my dear friend Nick Francia. It's always good to be on the show with you, or any show with you. Thank you, and welcome to all of our guests tuning in. Carrion Comfort Studios, our dear friend Wes, who is the man. Check him out at Carrion Comfort Studios. He's a hoot.
He's
Iron
awesome.
City by Night. Yeah.
Which is not premiering, but episode 2 will be dropping this Sunday. So definitely tune in. I believe that's going to be at 8 p.m. Eastern time, I believe. It's awesome. That is not my cosplay as Wolf Pup. This is just how I dress. I actually got a new haircut for anyone that might be interested.
All right.
Yeah, new haircut. The hair is manageable today. It's awesome. I'm feeling pretty hip and hipster. It's also November, so it is the time of plaid. Plaid is back in November, and December we wear plaid. But before we even get back into any of this, I need to reintroduce my guests. Rick Wheeler, storyteller of projects by Salem by Night and North Shore by Night, as well as one of the founders of Gehenna Gaming and the vice president of content development. Rick, we talked a little bit of what you've been up to last week.
We did.
So I don't know if we need to restate it, but how are you feeling this week?
Well, as we are alive here, we are waiting for the results of the election, which is nail biting. But it's good to be here and talk about some things that are positive and fun. So this is a good distraction from a lot of that hubbubaloo. Other than that, good Halloween. Kids went trick-or-treating, had a blast with them.
That's amazing. What did they dress up as?
My little guy was Raboot, the new Pokemon from Sword and Shield. He's the fire starter. No, the Twisted Fire Starter. No, he's he's a soccer playing rabbit, and of course he picks a Pokemon that doesn't have a costume, right? So he had to make one. My daughter was Minnie Mouse, and that was fun. But other than that, I have been working on a Saturday night one-shot that's coming out this Saturday for Star Trek Adventures. This is going to be a Federation playing campaign, not a campaign, but a one-shot that is going to be horror for sure.
Excellent.
I'm a big Trekkie, so I'm throwing in a couple of sprinklings of fun Star Trek Easter eggs that people who are diehards or even casual fans might pick up on. And if you do, I'd love to hear about them, if you caught them, just because I'll know I succeeded at sneaking that in there. But it's going to be a good time. We are finalizing our cast for that, and it's going to be good. Tuesday, November 10th, I will have Star Trek writer and novelist Keith R.A. DeCandido on our stream. Which
could be a great interview.
Yes, he is a fabulous writer of many novels. I loved his IKS Gork Hunt series, a Klingon novel series that was fantastic. I would actually love to run a series of games based off the story of that books. But he's a great guy. He's written for World of Warcraft, Dungeons and Dragons, and tons of Marvel stuff. Big, lovable, geeky guy, and just a swell person in general. So stay tuned for that interview. It's going to be cool, and I'd like to bring on some of my other Star Trek author friends that I've known for a number of years, because they're entertaining people, even aside from what they do. So it's we got some good stuff going on. We submitted our Red Opera scenario.
I know, exciting.
And as of today, we got feedback from Rick Heinz, who loved it. and was really excited and digging it. And he particularly liked the Broken Path Warlock that I had created. So I'm very excited to see what his team says about it, thinks about it, and get it out into the wild. That way, people like you viewers can let me know how I did. And if you think it's cool, if you think it sucks, let me know. I'll know what I need to change next time, I guess.
Well, it definitely
Nick,
does
what about
not
you?
suck.
Yeah, thank you.
Well,
Nick, what about you? What have you been up to?
Oh, before I go into what's up to, I'm gonna go ahead and drop the Red Opera Kickstarter, even though the project is ordered and completely backed at this point. I believe getting over 160,000 to bring it to life.
Yeah.
You could still pre-order it now, which is going to include the campaign written by Gehenna Gaming and yours truly, Rick Wheeler. I'm not logged into Twitch currently because I'm waiting for a code, so I can't drop the link into the description, but someone should. Someone should right now. But no, I've honestly, I've been okay. We're getting up to the, I've just kind of been busy with stuff here and there, work specifically, as well as some other stuff that hopefully the stream will be seeing. As you can tell between last week's episode and the episode we did with Brian, my setup has actually increased. I've gotten a better camera. I've worked out my mic settings a lot better. I've even got myself a light that we can use, which has been awesome. So
right on.
Yeah, it's been great. I've just kind of been, Halloween was fun. Definitely got to indulge in a lot of horror movies, and just because Halloween's over doesn't mean I can't stop or I can't keep going. So, but yeah, I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to talk to my friends, and I'm excited to have a good time.
Me too. let's get deep diving and get some good healthy distraction into a hobby we love and enjoy.
Exactly. It's like you said before. It's been a tough world out there, but things can always get tougher, especially with the blood-sucking creatures of the night coming into you. So to everyone at home, if you're here because you want to unplug, go ahead and unplug. If you're here because you want a distraction, we're here for distraction. We love you. I love you. Rick loves you. Let's go right into the deep dive. The last time we left off on this, we had just kind of finished wrapping off talking about how to design a setting and the cities for your Vampire the Masquerade game. By the way, we're talking about Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. If it wasn't apparent by the title down below, that's what we're talking about. So I'm going to get right into it. And this thing that we didn't really get to cover last time was specific player stuff, which is why I didn't want to kind of rush through it, Wes, because I was like, let's go for a part 2 with this. So Rick, are you ready for me to kind of, grill you a little bit on all this?
By all means. I love talking about this stuff.
Well, let's get to grilling. So, first things first. So we kind of know that each clan brings a different representation of kindred kind. What does it mean to embody a clan and past the whole, I have their disciplines and their cool powers? Like, what beyond that? What does it mean to embody a clan?
It's with V5, one of the first things that I heard about it that I was automatically excited for was that the predator types kind of chop up the standard 3 that a lot of clans have. Now you could be a Toreador and have potence or dominate, you're not as locked into predictability. You can't always just automatically assume that you've got a good idea of what your opponent has in their weapons belt anymore, But the clans are a brilliant thing that I think really has a lot of appeal to people in the world of darkness. They have their own cultures. They've got their own ways of doing things. Each have their own enemies and flavors to them. It's easy to get typecast into some of them, but at the same time, thinking about new ways to use those old tried and true views on them, those perspectives, can be a lot of fun, or even twisting it upside down and doing something completely new with it. I remember a Ravnos character I made, who they're typically all criminals. I made a character who was basically like a Better Call Saul type, and he was a lawyer. It's your clan bane is that you have to be some kind of criminal, and here he is, a lawyer using illusions to fabricate evidence. Like court only, of course. But he was like a used car salesman. It was a big hit. But I've always heard, like, people always want to do something new with the Toreador. Like, I'm going to make him a martial artist, or her a martial artist, or a trapeze person, deal with like the celerity and the grace of it, or try and think of a new way to do art, right?
Yeah,
Like,
because anything could be an art form, really.
yeah, I mean, some people have told me, well, I made them a karate person because that's an art form. Well, yeah, it is true, but it's easy to like hyper focus on some of those things and forget you could. And I guess maybe I'm at the stage of my character creation where I'm like, or even my own characters that I make, I'm like, all right, well, what's something that people do expect of them that I can make creepier?
Yeah.
Like, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can just put razor blades all over it, You can make it like the combat wheelchair from Orkborg. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of different things you can do. I think you can embrace that stereotype just as much as you can try and do something new. It's cool to look at some of the old city books, which is where I get a lot of, not necessarily ideas, but inspirations to try something new. The city books were awesome because they've got massive lists of NPCs in there. And if you're like stumped on what you can do for a different kind of clan, you can kind of look through the clan sections of all these different books. I mean, in the line, there were maybe like I'm guessing there's over 20 of them with, I don't know, 20 to 30 NPCs each. It's a lot of different characters to pull from that use as examples. Even the clan books have some interesting stuff. Puppy Lover in the chat says, Rick, tell them about the wild shit you did to Stellan. Stellan was Puppy Lover's caitiff, who was kind of masquerading as a Toreador. And Stellan was a sommelier in a blood circulatory system like ring. This might be getting off track with the question, but here's something you can do with the caitiff. Obviously, caitiff can, like, they try to hide what they are because you'll get killed. I know that's a question you want to have down the line, so I'm going to not focus on the caitiff as much here. But I guess this is a side tangent, but this is a good one. So Kay's character was going to unload a shipment that came in off the docks that was supposed to be blood for a event that her sire was hosting. And when he opened the doors to the containing device that came off the ship, it was full of staked kindred that were going to be drained and sold for vitae. Except one of them, the stake must have fallen out during shipping, and this very large 400-pound kindred rushed at them. He was already a white at that point. He diablerized a number of the other kindred that were on board the ship. They had to basically use like a dragon rounds and shoot him in the head and put him down. But then checking the shipment, there were the kindred that this large individual had eaten, plus himself, that were now missing from the full volume that they were expecting. So Stellan's sire was like, listen, we have less product now than we had before. I'm going to need you to find at least 3 more kindred to make up for this this loss that you have suffered. So Stellan was like, oh shit. I need to find a place with kindred and stake them and bring them to my sire to be pressed as grapes, right? And he's using this analogy of, it's the wine press to try and dehumanize and desensitize and detach from what's actually happening. No, this is just part of the process. And it turns out that Stellan had been dominated for years into thinking that this was normal, and years of their life were missing, where they did this time and time again, and every time they morally questioned it, it just was removed. So Stellan goes to a bar, finds some kindred, tries to get the drop on him. An elder catches on, finds out what's really up, and says, you got some fucked up choices you're making tonight. You should
pretty much at that point.
You should probably think about that. Stellan then told his coterie mates what the deal was. And they were like, yeah, that's horrific. Why would you ever do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it's all started coming back to Stellan at once that actually you've been doing this for a long time. And it just, I think Stellan even puked. Had the car pulled over, threw up, was just like sick of all the things they did. And as the storyteller, I'm playing her sire, and I'm texting her like, him, what's happening? What's the delay? You're taking too long. Tell you what, I'll pay you $5 million if you take your 2 coterie mates and just stake them and bring them here to be drained. We don't have time for this. And Stellan was like, shit. Like, do I take the money? Or do I betray them? And, came clean, said I couldn't do it. And then the sire betrayed all of them. But huge moral dilemma that I put my player through. And it's cool because Puppy Lover eats it up with a spoon and loves it when you have great character drama like that. So that was the fun thing we did.
Let's say that's like just like kindred trafficking. That's crazy. Like that's
So I mean, it's a little bit off of the original question, which I apologize, but it was a cool thing that popped up in chat.
It's a good anecdote.
Yeah. So those are some of the stereotypes you can break, even regardless of what clan you are. Kindred can be of any job. A caitiff who's dealing in circulatory system stuff, you don't typically think of caitiff as being rich or in high society, but this one was. And he made such a living off of it that no one really suspected it, so no one questioned it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why they were they were able to pass as Toreador for so long. People just believed the lie because it was so believable. So you can do the same thing with your characters. It's always fun to maybe even put, if you're making a chronicle, have one NPC who's maybe masquerading as a different clan. It might not even be an independent clan that's just trying to fit in. It could be one of the major players, maybe even a high clan who just doesn't feel right in their own skin.
Yeah.
Like a Ventru who just feels more at home, pulling the strings behind the scenes like the Lasombra do. Like respecting your enemy enough to want to live among them,
Yeah, like almost become your enemy.
Totally. And I think there's some good story material in that. Like, what do you do when you're the black sheep among the other sheep, and all of a sudden they find out? Do they use you to then go to your old bloodline to infiltrate and screw them over? I mean, these are wonderful things about the World of Darkness that are only possible because we have 13 clans with all these different enmities between them and old feuds and histories and methods of doing things that you can really play around with. Not too many other games have that. You can have a ranger and a barbarian, and yeah, they're different. They have different ways of doing things, but they're not so different in their operation and culture that they can't see eye to eye or get along, or they're never completely at war with each other,
That's I would say that's slightly less nefarious of you, really. But like, no, I totally get it. It's like the blood runs sort of deep for these kindred, and I mean, like it's having a mortal enemy, against a person that you or them won't die anytime soon. These grudges just kind of they go long, and they just grow and grow and grow more intense.
Oh, indeed.
Well, that's an excellent answer to that question. We're just gonna bring my next one. You kind of answered it, but it's a nice little segue.
Sure.
So between the players, between each different clansman, friction and tension, kindred, especially player characters, will naturally grind against each other, whether it's just because of their agendas are different or just their personalities, and they're going to create sparks. Creating sparks is kind of one of the biggest things that will happen in Vampire the Masquerade. So how do you, as a storyteller, how do you handle that so that the inner conflict between the coterie is fun but not overbearing?
You have to, knowing your players, so session 0 is super important. Discuss right off the bat if this is something that they'd be comfortable with. You may start off all on the same page, same team, same coterie. You guys all know each other, but still have the discussion that things change. You never know where that chronicle is going to be, even 2 sessions down the line. Alliances could totally shift. Someone could say the wrong thing, and all of a sudden, they hate the other character that they've previously associated with. That's not uncommon. We had a local group who one player said something session 1 that pissed off a character, and they wrote it down in a notebook and just kind of held on to it for, I don't even know how many sessions. It must have been over 15. And I caught up with one of my friends and I was like, oh, how's it going? And they're like, that person killed me. And I'm like, why? Weren't you like, I was there for some of that stuff. You got along with them all great, blah, blah, blah. Well, apparently I'd said something session 1 that really pissed them off, and they'd like held on to it and eventually had me killed. I'm like, Jesus, what the hell? Pro move. All right.
That's called planning.
And he was cool with it. He's like, oh, it's fine. I rolled into the character. I'm like, well, that's good. I guess. Press F to pay respects, everybody. So, yeah, you have to have, it takes a certain friendship for some of those things that play at the table to play off well. You can steal an item or something that a player had worked really hard on, only for it to end up something like, wait, what? And, it can be really entertaining, as long as it's not done in a mean-spirited way. But have a way for the storyteller or even the other players to send each other messages. I know when I storytell, I'm always like, here's a chat. You can either Discord me, or if we're playing on Zoom, you can just message me directly. And I message them directly all the time. I give them little bits of info from the world or things that they pick up that other players don't, because that's what would happen if they were real characters anyway. So if you're plotting something, I have them just tell me directly. Like, I was playing with Mike from Darker Days Radio. We were testing out a session for PAX East that our friend was running. I think it was his first time running V5, and he wanted to make sure he was doing okay, right? So he had this awesome jailbreak. Might have him run it as a one-shot for SNOS. It's so good. It's some kind of like prison breakout riot that happened in like the 80s that I had not heard of. And it's this brutal story, right? But you're Kindred trying to break in and steal something because they have like info on Kindred. So we're breaking into this maximum security prison. And he gave us all like, this person, okay, it's like a secret card. And it's like, you're allied with this person, but they're going to betray X. And you're extremely loyal to X. So through the whole thing, I'm like, shit, I know he's going to betray them, right? And sure enough, Mike Androok from Darker Days was like, hey, you and me, pal, we're always like together through and through. I'm going to steal this thing, even though they're going to think we destroyed it. Savvy? Is that cool? And I'm like, yeah, that's great. And meanwhile, I'm texting Black Nemarium, who's usually in our stream here, in our chat, and I'm like, hey, boss, he's going to betray you. I got your back, really. I'll handle it,
Yeah.
And Mike's just like, I had no idea. So by the end, we go through a ton of crazy shit. I steal this USB drive, and I swap it with one that was blank or something. And we break out, we get back to base, and it's this like evidence on the prints that we're all going to use. And it's like super, you can get a ton of money on it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he goes to boot it up on his computer, and it's blank. And he's like, what the hell? And he's like, Storyteller, I stole this thing. What the heck happened? He's like, yeah, no, dude, Rick totally stole that. And like the look on Mike's face, his jaw just dropped, and he was like, you gotta be kidding me. That's hilarious, But, we had role played together so much, and we had so much fun doing this stuff to each other all the time that it made it great. Now, if I didn't know him and I did that, you gotta make sure, it's kind of like, you gotta know your audience. You gotta know who the people we were playing with. If you don't, have a discussion about it, because that intrigue is what makes this game so great. There's so many opportunities to backstab and this and that. The players are the stars, and if they're having fun and they feel fantastic, that's great. But some of that cloak and dagger, you got to make sure that everyone's on board with it, because you might there's that we talked about last session. There's bleed, right?
Oh yeah.
People take this very seriously. It's like and rightfully so. This is a great game, and it's drama and character development, and you are very invested and involved. So think about your choices and talk about it. You don't necessarily have to let the cat out of the bag. You know, you can be like, hypothetically, you know, you do the old Peter Parker thing where it's like, say I had a friend who was Spider-Man who had herpes. You know,
I do remember that part in the movie, specifically
that part especially. What kind of cream would I buy?
Specifically that
spider
word for
cream
word.
or the human cream? Well, you mix the two creams, Peter. Hypothetically,
Implying that they sell herpes for spiders. Herpes. I almost said spider treatment for herpes. Herpes treatment for spiders.
Spider treatment for herpes. It sounds like a 1700s Victorian snake oil remedy. You just rub these spiders on yourself. You'll be great. This is why I'm a Malkavian.
Oh, a little gross. Maybe just a tiny bit.
Maybe a little gross.
Maybe a little bit. All right, I'm gonna continue on from that. Yeah, and then kind of another great thing I really liked about the vampire, like just about playing vampire in general, was the idea that there's this thing like the beast that's inside you, that your hunger, it's the manifestation of your player's hunger. In your mind, what is the best way to present that inner manifestation and how to roleplay that out, or how you as a player would roleplay it if you were the one that had to RP that out?
Yeah, I mean, it's something as a player I'd talk about, especially I talk about the storyteller, like, hey, this is going to come up. How do we want to handle it? Do you want to roll the beast for me? Or is it something you're cool with me acting out? You know, discover who has the reins and the agency to do that, and then go from there. My style, if the players don't tell me, I just do it. Or I will be like, hey, is it cool if I, like, you know, voice the beast for you, or you want to do it? And, you know, they'll let me know. But I typically make it like an extremely dark perception of what I think their player is. So I had a character who was extremely focused on money, and he was Nosferatu, and he just wanted to make it rich all the time, and he was trading insider stock secrets and stuff. And his beast was kind of like what you would picture to be like a New York mobster in like the 80s, who's like the chain smoking, like, you know, Johnny. Like, let's picture the Stellan situation from before. $5 million, you know, you're at Hunger 2 and all of a sudden, or 3, and all of a sudden your beast is like, you could buy a lot of blood packets with that, Johnny. You know, why don't you throw them under the bus? What are they gonna care? You know, just be the devil on the shoulder from like Looney Tunes, where, you know, he's just telling you all the bad things, but say it in a way that's believable. Actually appeal to the player's base vampiric instincts. You know, talk as if you don't have humanity, because the beast doesn't have humanity. The beast has what every actual beast has: self-preservation, fight or flight. But it's also using your player's mind and intellect. So maybe take a look at the dots on their sheet. What are they good at? Are they really good at manipulation? Then make a really manipulative beast. Are they strong? Maybe they're just really gruff and they actually start to push against the player's better judgment. Maybe even give them a point of aggravated willpower damage based on how intense the beast is trying to get what it wants out of you. You know, make it all goes back to making hunger and what you are the center and focal point, the tent pole of this new edition. Make the beast something that when it pops up and it talks to them, it doesn't have to be humorous like with the 1980s mobster, right? Because at that point he'll get hungry and then people just want me to do that impersonation all the time. But that's not the game. What it really is you're hearing a voice inside of you that is not you, and it should definitely bother you, unless you've made peace with it. And if you've made peace with it, how far have you really fallen? You know, if it's not alien to you, then perhaps you're not as human as you think. We have our friend Kindred in the chat who's saying, I ask players whose voice they hear. That's a great suggestion too. Maybe it's someone that they feared in their life. You know, I just watched the movie Matilda with my kids, directed by the wonderful Danny DeVito, right? And
He
my
directed
kids
that?
kind of, yeah, he wrote, directed it. He was fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of cool things he did as well for the girl. The lead actress, her mom was like having cancer, and Danny DeVito and his wife, who acted in the movie,
Mara Wilson.
were super kind, and like were part of her family and still are. So
That's awesome.
great people in the world, and you know, Danny DeVito's one of them. So, but my kids were watching this, and they see that Trunchbull, the principal lady, who's just
Oh my god.
vicious, right? She's pure evil, and they're like cowering in fear, you know. Maybe your player had something like that as a kid that scared the hell out, or like an uncle that just like rubbed them the wrong way, that they got creeped out by, or the high school janitor who had like a glass eye. You know, you never know. There's lots of things that you could pull up as like trauma from your character's past. They might not even know what that trauma is, but ask them, talk about it. If it's not something you brought up during character creation, then maybe they can create something on the fly. But you know, it's going to be personal for each character. You want it to be personal for each character. Player of the Stars. Have fun with it. Make it an ongoing part of the game. Make a notice as to what it is. Don't automatically just change the voice and forget next time, because you don't want that. You want consistency. But it's a great part of this game that can really be utilized to storytell the personal horror of this edition.
I remember specifically when we played for our first time, we played at PAX Unplugged, that my friend was playing, Rob was playing the Malkavian, and specifically the voice that he kept hearing was that of what was his name, Charles Manson. And I thought that was super interesting, especially for Mal.
Well, yeah, because I remember he was like, he had a knife, and he was like, he had to stab somebody, and he was like, and he was telling me, like, as if he's talking to himself, he's talking to me, because he was a great player, and he's like, oh no, I've never stabbed anyone before. Like, can I like use my dementation and my Malk web and think about channeling someone who would be able to teach me how to stab people? And I'm like, yeah, okay. You see like a Rolodex in your mind popping through faces of people you've seen in movies and
or heard about,
and you know, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and you're like, nope. And then finally it settles on a small man with long hair with an X burned in his head, with sunken eyes that are very beady, and he's very wiry. And I'm like, hey, Jack, it's Charlie. I hear you want to stab somebody, you know? and your buddy like lit up like a Christmas tree. He's like, yeah, Charlie, I've never stabbed anyone before. How do we do that? Let me show you how it's done, Jack. You know, you're not in prison. I'm in a prison. You know, the real world's out there, man. You know, and suddenly I'm like, okay. And because it's a one shot, I'm like, you get 2 dots of temporary melee, buddy. You know, you now know how to stab people because you're being influenced by somebody else who stabbed many people. You know,
oddly enough. I was gonna say, like, oddly enough, the same voice, very similar to the voice used for the rats in that game.
Yeah. My rats are always very snivelly.
They're always from Boston.
Yeah.
But no, definitely I feel like the voices you put added a different level of immersion, and I quite enjoyed it. I thought that's really interesting. And you know what? Maybe that comes down to sometimes you gotta be okay with trying something new. People are like, well, I don't do voices because I feel like I'll make a fool of myself. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about that. You put out what you have, and it works. Sometimes it doesn't, but you know, your players will usually just be like, whatever. You
know, and if you're willing to make a fool of yourself, that's cool. I mean, the players are likely going to make fools of themselves with some of the things they do or say, and it's vulnerability in role playing. It's having fun. But, you know,
I would argue that making a fool of yourself is what GMing is at its core and center.
It's probably that's probably a testament as to why I picked it up so easy.
Because like you are essentially you are essentially putting on this puppet show for an interactive audience, like that are also cast as well, and they're just as foolish as you.
Right. I love storytelling, so it's so much fun. And even I do it now even to like unwind. I found lately, like I stopped for a little while because I was doing a lot of writing projects, and I'm like, I'm really stressed out. Some of my friends are stressed out too. I'm gonna like do a couple sessions for fun, just because it's good to kind of get into a different world sometimes. I'm sure everyone else watching knows that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I get in those kind of situations too, where I've been a player for sometimes usually I'm a GM or a storyteller, but then I get to this point where I'm just being a player for these large bouts, and I sit there and I'm like, well, this is what I always wanted, but really my true love is in GMing. It's great to control everything behind the scenes. Maybe that has something to deal with my own like of power and like pulling strings or something like that. Maybe that's not a good sign at all, but
we're discovering unhealthy things about Nick.
Yes, unhealthy things about all GMs. That's shit GMs say.
Right. That's okay. So you heard it on the deep dive.
Right here. This is my show. This is what I'm here to talk about. The deep dive. The show for game masters by game masters.
And like why and subscribe. They think things.
So moving on. So how do you, in your kind of your opinion, how do you show that the players, they can be, so a lot of people when they think of vampires are like, all right, or kindred, sorry, they gotta use the K word, can't use the V word. They think, well, kindred are cool, they're suave. That's kind of the idea we get from the past like 20 years of like of vampire media, that they're these like cool seductors of the night. But how do you play that base level of suaveness, but underneath you're still putting forth the fact that these are literal monsters? And I mean, that's, that they are monsters, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting because the name of the game is the Masquerade, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have the literal masquerade in the game where you're hiding what you are from society, trying to hide that you are a monster. At the same time, you're having the second face for a lot of different things in this game. It's more than just a title. It's more than just a law that's one of the traditions. You're constantly putting on a face to other kindred, to other mortals, of someone who you might not actually be underneath. Especially older kindred, because you don't want to show your weakness. You don't want to show who or what you're attached to, because it can always be used against you. And older kindred kind of know that because they've been betrayed so many times. They know those subtle nuances, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the person you are in public and the person you are in private is really what it boils down to. You give the players an opportunity for that juxtaposition. I know what I started doing a lot, and it was just something I don't think I read about it anywhere. It's just something I tried out. When I had some home chronicles going on, I would have a scene, kind of like what I described earlier with Kay, and something deep and disturbing may have happened to them, and I'd pause the game and be like, how does that make your character feel, Stellan? What are you thinking about? And you'd have, Stellan acting cool and being like, oh yeah, no, it's fine. To their coterie mates being like, oh no, guys, I got this. I'm like, okay, how does your character really feel about that? Let's put the game on pause and do an introspective. Like, as a player character in the role of this character you've created, what would your character be thinking about all this deep inside? And it takes a little bit of like a maturity level and a trust to not metagame certain things. Mm-hmm. But having them reflect on certain events in the moment is kind of like the director's cut when you watch DVDs. Especially if you really love a movie, like you're watching Alien or Aliens and you're like, God, I wonder what Jonesy was thinking about at the time when
I wonder what the cat was thinking.
Yeah, the cat. I really want to know. So, or like, what was going through like Ripley's head when Ash betrayed them all? Like, what was the first thing that they thought of? Like, did they know that was did anyone know that was an android kind of thing? Like anyone on the ship, or did they just keep it to themselves? Like, and Ridley Scott or some of the actors would be like, oh yeah, like X number of people knew about it, but they kept it hush hush, and hey, we all paid the price and died, But putting the spotlight on your character and I think, or your players, and having them talk about that, I think it's great. It's good for their own development in that character's shoes, because you can so often go with some of these settings. I think it's always been seen in a positive light with my players because it makes them feel important. It makes them feel like I really care, because I do really care about the characters that they've put on the table, that they put in this scene, in this world. And so far, the other players that have been at the table that have witnessed this and have had me ask that question to them as well, they're practically waiting for their turn to be like, I can't wait for them to ask me how I feel about this, because this is fucked, or I got something my character's really brewing on about this. It can help your role play, it can help your immersion. And it's weird because it's almost like a fourth wall breaking, like timeout.
Mm-hmm.
But those characters in that world would be thinking about those things anyway. When everyone else is being silent, that's what's really happening in your head. There's so many times where we we fake like we're listening to someone when we're really thinking about something that's really bothering you. And that doesn't come across as much in a tabletop setting, but it should, or maybe it should. It's up to every GM, it's up to those players and how they. But I think that's a good way we can utilize like the cool, suave persona with still being like, I'm an absolute monster. Like, there's bound to be even an elder who has a fit of humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you see them help someone cross the street. And it might be something they haven't done in several hundred years, but they did it because it's some kind of reflex thing. Who knows? That elder might be thinking about that alone in a room for a solid week. Why did I do that? I just went to a feast with other elders where we tore apart a bus full of people and sat around there patting our bellies, laughing like a bunch of bloated ticks. And here I am helping someone cross the street like I did when I was alive in 1820. Is something wrong with me? Like, what should I feel bad about here? Right? Those are some of the things that make the personal horror of this game really cool.
So I'm gonna skip ahead here because I'll come back to my other points, but just because it seems like the best place to springboard off of. So, like, very simply, are kindred tricking themselves into feeling like they're good people? Are kindred are we all, like, as a kindred, as a player character, are you just living a lie and just beating back the nature of what you are as much as much as you can until it runs that clock finally runs out and your numbers there?
When you sent me this question originally, I really thought about it because it's definitely a very philosophical question, not only of the soul and ethics or morality, but just of the game in general. It's a question that a lot of people have asked, and I feel like they've talked about it. A number of people, can a blood-sucking monster be good? I think my definitive answer is yes, because you look at people who are vegetarians or vegans who don't eat meat at all, and some of them consider people who do eat meat absolute monsters, right? And that's their perspective on how these people are. And a player wants to answer that question positively, and they outright refuse the notion that they're anything but monsters. Those are the kind of players you want at the table, the ones who ask that question. Are kindred good people? Is my character even good at all? Like, those are people who care about the game, who care about playing and portraying someone who is conflicted. And you look at examples like LA by Night, Annabelle. I would say, yeah, she's a good person who is a monster. She doesn't let her monstrous nature overcome her humanity. I think you look at Golconda, the concept it's kind of in V5 loosely. It could be expanded upon a little bit more, but they can practically become human again. I think in V20, if you reach Golconda, you could even go on the daylight kind of thing. At that point, are you a vampire anymore? You can break Golconda. You can lose humanity and then never reach Golconda again, but you've overcome a curse that was, for a long time, the very essence of your being, right? The very temple of what you were. You don't have that beast talking to you anymore. Are you really a vampire then? Clearly you weren't fully a monster. So Can they be good people? I think the lore, the mechanics say yes. but it's every character for themselves, right? I've definitely written a couple of characters that are NPCs that will make people question that on each end of the spectrum. Characters that are really evil, characters that are really good. That's the kind of introspection I think really makes this game special. I know I keep saying that, but this game is really special to me. I really love it for these reasons. And these are the kind of questions that I love talking about. I'd even love to see people in the chat. Kayla says loves the debate of bagger versus being someone who's a farmer eating animals. Yeah, I mean, technically those are both ethical sources of vitae. Even someone who's a blood leech technically is not harming people, but they're harming other kindred. Are kindred people?
That's the
some characters ask themselves that. I think they're a different kind of person. You're a vampiric person. I'm a vampiric American.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because that's kind of the thing also in like LA by Night, like with Jasper. That's his whole deal, is that he feeds on other vampires because it's somewhat morally better in his mind, because they're just all monsters in his head.
Until he befriends enough and falls in love with one, right?
Reaches his own personal Golconda, yes.
Maybe. I like that, things like that, and that's the telltale sign of a good storyteller. Someone who puts things in a character's life that changes their perspectives and their values. That's something we should probably write down and take note of. Find out what your character's ambitions are, who they are as people, and then put NPCs or things in the story that make them question that, for better or worse. You had someone who was a complete loner like Jasper, in love with friends. Even Nellie, who he should not get along with, and at the beginning of the series they had a very kind of standoffish kind of thing, like, that's a Nosferatu, that's a Toreador, shouldn't probably work. But there's a business respect they start off with, that by, I think, where we left off with the last place they left off in the series, they're kind of like a weird family, yeah. So are they good people? They can be. They usually aren't.
But that's something we should all kind of simmer on for a second, probably. But I hate to switch gears here because I think this is such a great point to discuss. But yeah, we got a lot to talk about. We could probably come back to it later a bit. But so we talked about how, like, vampires, they grow, they get better. How do you distinguish a neonate from an ancilla to an elder? Like, as a GM, how do you differentiate that through, like, personality and appearance, or just way of approach?
Fledglings, very connected to humanity, very typically up with the times, the modern technologies. They have, I would say, more streetwise than any of the others. They're practically still connected to their mortal lives. They're likely going to be the greatest cause of breaches as well, whether it's unintentionally by technology or acting on pure emotion and getting involved with people that were in their lives and then screwing up, whether it was a frenzy of hunger, or someone, you go to like Burning Man or something, right, and you get too close to a torch and you're just there with your friends trying to enjoy a concert that you loved in your mortal life, and all of a sudden a bonfire gets too close to you, you terror frenzy. How do you explain that? Fledglings, they make mistakes. They should recoil in horror at what they are. I think that's kind of like step one. They're trying to come into grips on this new reality. Once they kind of come to grips with that a little bit, they're neonates. They're once again terrified at the larger world, a little more comfortable in their own skin and what they are. They've kind of come to grips with it, but now they have to answer to other monsters to survive. I think fledglings are like, oh my God, what am I? And then as they transition and get a little older, they're like, okay, I'm cool, I can live with this. Like, Your character at PAX Unplugged. You were Nosferatu. You just got embraced. You just started getting ugly. You're going through a bad time. And then there came a point where you're like, wait, I can do these things? This ain't so bad. You know?
The
You
trade-off
kinda
was there.
Yeah, you get the silver lining, you get the glass half full. But then you realize that there are the traditions. There are, you know, hey, Jack, you just got bitten in the wrong domain. You're under Prince William now. He ain't gonna like you. You ain't gonna like him. But you're gonna be dancing to his tune for the next 50 years, kid. You know, that sucks to hear. Like, you worked at Walmart and you hated your prick boss, and you've only worked there for 6 months. Now you got to deal with someone worse who's going to treat you like crap you stepped on in your shoe for 50 years, maybe longer, until you're someone that's considered an ancilla who can be trusted with like some tasks. That sucks. Like, there's a reason the young go to the anarchs, right? Your bosses never die, and you can never get promoted. It's even worse if you're Tremere. So, I mean, Ancilla, I typically see them as slightly more jaded and detached from their mortal lives. You know, they've had mortals they were close to die, maybe even generations of them. You know, it's kind of like, I consider, like, if you watch the first Highlander movie with Christopher Lambert, I consider him an Ancilla. He's someone that has fallen in love, and then the person died. Now repeat that for like 400 years. At that point, he's just like, if someone cuts my head off, fucking great. You know, I'm kind of done with being stabbed. Being stabbed sucks. You know, I've survived so many gunshots. They don't tickle. You know, and I can't fall in love again. I can't do that to myself. And then they do, because part of them still desires connection. And you just get so jaded. And, you know, seeing that cycle not end, plus having their fair share of getting their hands dirty as a neonate and being betrayed by their kindred. You know, they say they're solitary creatures, but then again, they hunt in packs and they have these societies, right? And you think the only people that you can relate to are now other vampires. And then you get betrayed by them time and time and time again. You get so fed up and, okay, great. You know, even a neonate who wants to befriend an elder with the best, or an ancilla with the best intentions, is going to be looked at with skepticism. You know, or an elder trying to do them a favor. Yeah, sure you are. You know, I think if you play Coders of New York, the sheriff, who is an amazing Toreador, is a great example of an ancilla, because he's someone who, as you play Coders of New York, you just get embraced, right? And he's tough, and he's got a 3 strikes policy, and he doesn't really give too much of a shit. But if you play ball and you kind of do what he says, he softens up a bit. You know, he's not completely gone.
Yeah.
And Coteries of New York, he's got this La Sombre he's got to deal with, who's kind of like his deputy. And, you know, they don't personally get along. She's kind of a wise ass, and he doesn't like how disrespectful she can be, but at the same time, he legitimately is trying to look out for this person. And you can tell it's against his best interests. It's absolutely against his best interests because that's a freaking La Sombra. And everyone's sketched out by the whole thing anyway. But here he is trying to defend her when they throw her under the bus time and time again. It's an interesting way to be conflicted about duty and persona with the Ancilla. Elders, I think they're wacky, and I love it because they're so detached and jaded and skeptical and old-fashioned, and above all, you know, and I learned this from the guys at 25 years of ETM, petty. They're super petty. Like,
oh yeah, their patience have just run out.
It's an art for them. Yeah, you go to your 400th wedding, you know, and like it's like maybe even the 5th one that month, and you're just like, I'm so done with this. This is stupid. You know, there comes a point where the only things they care about are blood and watching other people dance like puppets to their strings. You know, you're sitting there in the back, the bride and groom go up the aisle. I do, okay, see you later. On to the party. This sucks. You know, what could liven this up? Well, maybe I'll dominate the best man and I don't know, all the best men to raise their hand, and as the like submerged directive, and then as the priest is like, should any hold their peace, all of them just raise their hand and be like, I banged the bride, all at once in unison. And meanwhile, your vampire rival is the one that invited you to this wedding. That's like their great grandchild, and they're extremely proud about their family. The family is everything to them. This is like putting a bow on it. They're like, this is my generation. It could be like a Giovanni thing, and it's even worse. They're even more connected, right? This is like the Putinesca. And meanwhile, you've got all these people who are like, we did it. And the bride, I don't know, is looking at everyone in horror, and the whole thing just becomes a giant mess. And then all of a sudden you get some guy in the back stand up, tip his hat, and walk out the door. Holy crap. Like suddenly that elder is sitting there going, golf clapping. And meanwhile, the Putinesca is like, you son of a bitch, I know it was me. On my day of my daughter's wedding. They do these ridiculous petty things, and that's what makes the run lives. I actually made a list of like crazy moves that elders do for one of my own VTM projects, and yeah, one of them is literally commissioning art of another kindred, only the art is of them dead, and you send it to their haven, which is embarrassing, right? And maybe they get really pissed off and they throw it in the fire. Like, how dare you design artwork of my head cut off, or me turning into ash, or whatever. And they're plotting revenge. They're very offended. But then an Elysium is called, and it's at an art gallery, and all of the artwork in the art gallery is of that same kindred, dead in 60 different ways. And like maybe mortals like unveil the draperies over all these paintings at once, and every kindred in the room goes and then they all look at the one guy who's been painted like, someone wants him dead. What did he do? And all of a sudden all these people are talking, and that one elder again is just like, and that might be the only excitement that guy's had in 100 years. But that's the wacky alienation, the detachment of humanity.
So elders are just trying to get their rocks off.
Fuck yeah, they are. In my sick and twisted head, they are. Yes. It's about power and fucking with people. Maybe your elders are different. What do your elders do?
I've never, oh man, this is gonna sound real bad. I've never, not a V5. I've never ran a game of V5.
Mm-hmm. No.
So yeah, I've ran the Requiem, because I've always just been a Chronicles of Darkness fan. I've ran the original. I've played in the original one. I've never ran the original one. But yeah, I've never ran an Elder. Not gonna lie. I've run like I guess I've run like princes and stuff like that, and they're very much like, I know more than you. Shut up. I know like. And I always like remember like, okay, I have to talk to the players like they're children, because that's how the prince is gonna talk. Because to them they're babies.
Yeah, and you're using experience of like how everyone in authority talked down to you.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And it fucking infuriates me. So I guess if my characters, if my players walk out of a room, I guess, and I mean that's with any authority figure in any game, walk out there and going like, wow, that guy was a dick. Then I'm like, all right, my job was done. Well,
mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished, boys.
Yeah, when you see the character relationship map at the end, and they include NPCs, and like everyone's like, fuck that guy. All right. This was a successful session we had here.
Drop my foot. Apologies. And sometimes it could even be more than that. Like sometimes I think a way you could even play an elder, like I'm thinking in my head, or just like anyone in power, specifically, it's like, can you imagine the elder being very sweet to your fledglings? And it's like, oh no, it's fine, up until the point they defy an order, or they question an order. Have you ever met people like that? Yeah. They're like, they're sickly sweet to you up until the point that you're like, wait a minute, and you press them on their authority, and then that's just how it is.
Yeah. I know that there's been examples of that in media. I can't think of one, but it's sociopathic, right?
Oh yeah.
It's like that. It's almost like bipolar. I'm thinking
Like,
Silence of the Lambs, but I can't really think of a good.
the only one that pops in my head, and it's not even like sickly sweet, is what is his name? Colonel Quadrich from Avatar, and where he's really buddy with the main character.
Oh yeah,
they're he's like, "Oh, we'll get your legs back, boy," and he's like, "Give me that intel." Up until the point he's like, "We can't do this," and then he's like, "Well, that's unacceptable."
right.
And that's when the villain in him come out. And up to that point, you kind of think he's like a decent dude. Well, we've kind of. I feel so. I was gonna ask you something about creating interesting NPCs, but we kind of bundled that together with the last question. I feel by indulging into it.
I've got some things I can shoot off.
Yeah. So what are your tips? Like quick tips for like making interesting NPCs, whether they're kindred or not. Maybe they're just normal people, or maybe they're ghouls.
I think it's important actually to make normal people NPCs as well. But I know that's another question. So, I mean, creating NPCs, designing them, make them much like you make your own player characters. Because if you're the storyteller, these are going to be characters you're going to be playing. Make sure that you are going to enjoy playing them, because this is how you're going to be playing. You know, I usually take a spark or an idea, like it's a crucial ingredient, and add passion to it. Make sure that there are some ideas that I think are going to be great, and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting, and then I'll continue making scenarios or work on something else, and my advice is sit on them for a little bit and then go back to them, especially when you've made a number of them. And you're going to know, looking at your list of characters and looking over the write-ups you did, which ones stick out to you more, which ones you enjoy writing more backstory on. Those are the ones that you're going to keep, because you're like, okay, I'm really invested in this character. If you're invested in that character, your players are probably going to be invested in that character as well. Whereas I'll look at some of the other ones on my list and I'm like, this was a good idea at the time,
we're not feeling it now.
But I'm not really feeling it anymore. Why is that, right? Sometimes I'll keep those just as a placeholder, and eventually another idea will pop up, and I'll be like, "Oh, that's really cool," and I'll scrap the name of that character. Maybe I'll take some things I did like, but I'll flush them out though. I'll mix two ideas into one character, being like, okay, this is all in all, because I did that initial step, this is a lot more balanced, it's a lot more believable, real. I think this is going to be something that's really cool. Take your time with it. Don't just get them out there in the wild and run with them. Think about them. Think about who they are in your world. Especially if you make them and then you start making more stories, think about how they're going to fit in to that narrative. Some of the other characters you may have created since, think about how they're going to interact with each other. What are your NPCs trying to achieve? What are their goals? Who are their friends? Who are their enemies? What do people say about them? I think Chicago by Night and maybe some of the other books have been like, there's whispers about certain characters. Like Nick is a gangrel and he's in my city, and he hangs out with he hangs out, it's because of the Plaid. He hangs out with a certain crew, but every time this one guy shows up at Elysium, Nick vanishes. What's with that? Is there something there? Is it coincidence? Is he plotting against him? Can he not be seen around him? Did Nick diabolarize someone that he knew? And if he shows his face here, I mean, Kindred have nothing better to do than to speculate and connive and plan. And anything that's even remotely coincidental, they'll dwell on, pick up on, and obsess over. So when you make whispers or rumors about your own NPCs, really think about them. And it's funny because those might develop into huge stories that you hand your notes off. I made a short little scenario, I want you to read it, here you go, I put it out there for the world, use it, internet land and family. People be like, oh cool, this is I don't know, Mobile, Alabama by night. And there's a cast of characters here. Oh man, these two guys hate each other for what reason? I love that. You know? And all of a sudden they'll be inspired by some kind of rivalry there, or even just hearsay. It's strange what sparks ideas and creativity in people. So yeah, maybe it didn't span into an entire chronicle or some kind of plot that you wanted to run, but to somebody else that might be a huge opportunity to tell a story they didn't expect. So when it comes to making those NPCs, give them their own touchstones, give them people that they care about as well, because they're not an island unto themselves. They have people that they're connected to, whether it's business or personal. Because your players are going to look at weaknesses for all of these people. Like, you might love a ton of your NPCs. Some of your players are going to love to hate them and look for weaknesses in their armor to break them down. Build in Achilles' heels. He's used the same ghoul to get him coffee every day at 7 p.m. on the dot. Cool, car bomb him. Whatever. I mean, it's true. Yeah, those kind of things. Don't be afraid to let your players get a foothold by building in some unique aspects to your NPCs, because everyone's got flaws.
And I think that segues a little bit into a point I can make here, a question. So, touchstones.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it. How do you deal with what's considered a player's waning threat of humanity? And secondary question of that, humanity in general, of what that means to a kindred, like the stat.
Yeah, like someone who's at a 7 compared to like a 3.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's like a 7 is like an everyday person, trying to do their best, sometimes failing. People who still feel bad about things that they do that weren't great, and they try to be a better person about it. The people that do it again and again, maybe they're like, whatever. Someone who's at a 6 is probably, I stepped over someone to get this promotion. I feel a little bad about it, but I got to look out for number 1. That's like a 6. A 5 could be like, I literally pushed a rival down the stairs, and they broke their leg, and now now I'm the running back for the Denver Broncos. Hope no one finds out about that. And it's a slippery slope from there. How much more evil you get, what you feel less guilty about, the darker the deed, is really what it is, right? An 8 and above, you're just more things that you could do that are bad hurt you. You're at a humanity 8 and you tell a lie to a friend. Even if they don't find out about it, you'd feel bad. Yeah. You should feel bad at a 7. But someone who's at an 8 is going to be a lot more empathic and just really tuned into, I really should come clean about that. And it's 8 at 8. I think you're at like I need to change my behavior, right? Our friend regular size mom in the chat says, at what point does a low humanity character become unplayable, or do they need to become an NPC? And I'm glad you brought that up, because that recently happened in the last campaign I was running. That I think we stopped sometime in July-ish, August. Mm-hmm. We had a character who was on a diablerie spree. Kept playing Russian roulette with his spiritual life in Vampire. And every time he did it, it was like someone that either deserved it or they were a white themselves. Like someone who was in captivity. Rob, Silent Infinity in our chat, he was warned. His coterie was warned. They sure were. I gave plenty of warnings. And like a good storyteller, I give you enough rope to hang yourself, especially when the dice betray you.
I love that.
Exactly what happened.
I love that phrase so much.
I never say no, dude. I'm like, you sure? Okay. And then we go ahead. And there are results. So this time the dice were unkind, you know. In the V5 mechanics, it's like you lose a dot of humanity each time you commit a diablerie minimum, right? You can also fail rolls and lose even more, and that's what happened. He was at a 5. And they went up against a Sabbat member who was an absolute terror. Like, it took, I think, 6 player characters to take him down. It was bad. They like ended up literally dogpiling him.
Mm-hmm.
And this player character got a hold of his ankle and just started drinking as fast as he could. And, you know, it was like a point of pride too. He was like collecting disciplines at that point. Like, hey, this is great. I can get away with this. You know, I can always. And it's funny because we recently had a thing where it's like, he's like, I'm kind of sad that I've been losing humanity. I feel like I'm losing my character. I want to build humanity back. And I'm like, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We're going to get in touch with your touchstone. It was his grandmother, right? Who lived in a nursing home that his sire actually ran. She was a Hekata who owned a nursing home. And as people would pass, she would like help them and look at their, you know, help their spirits out and stuff. She was an unusually kind person for a Hekata. She viewed death differently. It's one of my favorite NPCs. He didn't get a chance to rebuild his humanity, and it became like a very dramatic, sad thing. He diablerized this older Sabbat Bruja who was just gone himself. And I think he lost so much humanity, he was down to a 3.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you're drinking from someone that also had a Valdery, a pact with other Sabbat members where they were of one blood, one mind, one family, everything for the Sabbat. Nothing else matters. Your previous family, your coterie, they don't matter. Everything is like for the Sabbat, for the cause, for the Sword of Cain. And that kind of mentality, like a light switch, was in his head. And he's messaging me. He's like, how do I feel about any of these people now? Like, I've lost so much humanity. Like, what am I going to do? And I'm like, bro, this is what you would be thinking. Like, these are not your friends anymore. This is not your coterie. You need to get back to your real family, the Sabbat. And you just drank this guy's soul. You know where they are. You know, and meanwhile, the coterie is like, are you all right? And, you know, what's up? And he was actively trying to get them to like drink from him so that they could also experience this Valdery and get them to become Sabbat. And it was dark. You know, his best friend, who session 1, they were like in this together, they were abducted together, all this stuff. They went through so much stuff, always had each other's backs. And he's trying to betray this person and get them to come with him to the hotel where the Sabbat were, where they would take him over or diablerize him even, you know. But he was like, oh no, I got this great new family. I need you to meet them. Drink. I was like, no, you're out of your mind.
Yeah, just like a cult.
Yeah, absolutely. So his, I think someone made him call his touchstone, which was his
grandmother.
Well, it was his grandmother to check in on her and stuff. And, you know, his sire ended up picking up and she was like, hey, I heard what happened. You know, what's going on? Your friends told me what you did and that you're not the same. Like, I'm checking in. What's going on with you? And he's like, I don't need your fucking help. And they were close, you know, and he role played this perfectly. He's like, I don't need your goddamn help. Stay out of my life. And she's like, what are you talking about? What about your grandmother? He's like, she's a fucking useless meat bag. She's nothing but food. I don't give a shit.
Oof.
You know, and it was like, click, off like complete destruction of this guy's soul. And yeah, write a new character, bud. And it's funny, I actually ran he's like, I really want to like see this to the end. Like, I know I'm a prick and I'm this evil Sabbat person now. And I betrayed everyone and everything. What I'd still like to see this character off. I put a lot of things. I'm like, okay, cool. We'll do a one shot where it's you and the Sabbat. You're meeting them for the first time and you're adjusting to your new home. And now he's an NPC in that Sabbat pack. And if he wants to, he can play that character again, but it's going to be from a completely different perspective, and he's going to have to deal with the paths of enlightenment and how to live as a monster. But that's how vampire can get some time, when your character takes actions that go against your better nature or your vampiric nature. Which one do you give into? And sometimes those are the consequences. And it's not often when players play fast and loose like that. Usually a lot of players are much more like, I'll do a little bad and I'll see how it goes, and I got stains, shit, and I gotta roll. I still got my humanity. I played a Lasombra that got down to a 5. And suddenly I did like, oh man. I was acting much more ruthless, which is Lasombra. But the last session we had, which might be the last session we ever have, I was like, I need to do something about this. And I think the last thing my character did was go to a bar or restaurant and just like talk to normal people to try and reconnect with who he was and find out, almost like what the Australians do, like on a walkabout, just to try and get grounded and reconnect.
Yeah, reconvene with their human nature.
Yep. And the storyteller, who was Ravnos at the time, was like, yeah, you meet this lady, she's a librarian, and we hit it off really well and developed like a friendship. And it was like, that might be the last thing I ever do with that character, but that's satisfying. He did all this stuff to protect people. It was maybe too much, too far, and he suffered for it. And if the last thing he did was try and regain his humanity, I'm cool with ending it there, because that's an ending that is satisfactory to me.
It's worth it.
Absolutely. Redemption arcs in general are usually very fascinating in story.
Yeah.
And if you can create a story where someone has that roller coaster ride of the human experience, the vampiric experience, you're doing a good job with your players and as a storyteller. That's the kind of group you want to keep and run different games with and experience these things with, and then see how they do when they run the same thing. What did they learn from that experience, and what experiences have they lived through in their own lives that they can put into this game? That's why it's great every time someone gets behind the screen and tries it themselves, because we're going to get all these crazy great experiences from people that we may have never thought of doing ourselves.
That's a beautiful point, a beautiful answer to your question. Honestly, we're just getting gold, everyone. I'm
having a good time.
Yeah. My last question in the character kind of section before we go, and it'll be the last question I ask before we go to break. But it's also a big one. We talked about characters' beginnings. We talked about how they might evolve, but now it's time to talk about their end. Torpor being staked and the final death. How, as a GM, do you convene unlifed to like your players who are the undead? Essentially, they're living their own life. That death is still around the corner and still lurking for them, and it will claim them one day.
It's a good question, and it's something that a lot of other role-playing systems don't have or experience. Especially as players, you don't experience it until you play something like V5. Like, you can get frozen in D&D, or perhaps stunned, maybe caught up in some kind of mental domination. But to literally have a stake go through your character's heart, and you're like a ragdoll, but you are still cognizant of everything happening to you. You just have complete loss of agency, and essentially you're a corpse. It can be a great reminder of what kindred really are. Just a body that is being animated by something unnatural. There's one thing to roll the blush of life every time your character wakes up, and I don't make light of that. I'm like, okay, your heart that wasn't pumping suddenly is, and you feel your extremities getting warmer. like you feel like you used to. I try to make it so that they don't do the blush of life. Like you feel cold. You're not even clammy. You feel like mummified, dusty. You know, it's bizarre. It's almost like you're a wicker man or something. But yeah, I mean, having your character even be beaten into torpor, that's happened to me once in a Dark Ages game, where I was like a knight character and I got my ass handed to me so badly by so many Tremere and their acolytes that I was like, this is going to be a very short campaign. I thought I was literally about to die.
Oh my God.
And the other player was like a Cappadocian monk who was equally getting his ass handed to him with like aggravated damage left and right. And I ended up rolling to get out of torpor like twice. I went down twice. And I was like, oh, I'm dead, you know, to the point where we got the upper hand. I had never done a Diablo Arena game, and I've never done one since. But that one, me and my friend John were just like, as soon as we got the upper hand on the Tamir, it was like, snack time, you know?
Yeah, just for like
teeth
payback.
Are in. Yeah, it was absolute payback. You know, we both ended up consuming the souls. You know, we literally stood up at the table and high-fived, and we're like, yeah! And the storyteller was like, you bastards. And I'm like, come on. You know that was vindication, you know? So it's good to have those reminders that you are playing exactly what the name of the game is, a vampire. You know, hunger is great to think about. Disciplines and intrigue, it's all par for the course. Getting the reminder that you're an undead being every now and then is healthy for the narrative and for the player.
Damn. Well, with that, I think that brings us to our midway break. We currently, and when we come back, we will have about an hour and a half still left. Maybe a little bit shorter. We do tend to end early on this show, before the 3 hour, that 3 hours being our max. But we have covered so much ground.
Thank you.
And honestly, I think a lot of great questions have been asked. Specifically, my favorite being the idea of like the philosophical stuff, like are kindred monsters or not, or you know, or the nature of the beast itself. And I think as a play, it's, even though this is a show specifically for GMs, I think to understand what goes through the mind of a player and to educate someone on what they can think about as a player will only add to the experience as a whole. And I think that's something to feel really good about. Kind of asking yourselves those questions and role playing them out, because not a lot of systems do like let you role play that out. But you know, don't touch that dial. Get some water, get some coffee, take a deep breath, maybe get up and stretch. We'll be right back. I'm gonna grill Rick on some stuff about the lore. We're gonna go over some breakdowns of books, and then we're gonna finally end it when we just talk about Rick himself. It's gonna be amazing. Hour and a half of stream still left. We'll be right back.
Catch you then.
On the deep dive. If everything would click right, maybe it would be a little bit faster.
and they can't hear us.
I toned it down. Is it better now? It's sitting at like the possible thing it can sit at. This is just a very... Let us know if it's still too loud. You know what it was? It was the actual music from the what's it called? The intro I forgot to turn off. So,
Gotcha.
I'm a fucking fool.
No problem.
Yeah, no. An Underworld. I think Underworld's definitely my favorite vampire. Like, just like growing up on that, I love that movie.
Yeah, they were cool.
They got into a lawsuit, didn't they, with World of Darkness?
Yes, they did.
Did they? I don't know the detail. Did they win it? Did White Wolf win it?
I don't remember. I think they talked about it in the World of Darkness documentary.
Really?
Yeah.
There's a documentary. Oh, there is a documentary.
Yeah, it's really good. And Cynthia Maria's in it.
Is she? Oh, she really?
Yeah, because she was like at a LARP as a Ventrue or something, and she's in there like for a couple shots wearing like a suit.
So this really, is like, how old is this movie?
It's only from like a couple years ago, but a lot of the footage is like from, I don't know, I think it's spread out. It was before 5th edition, but they were kind of talking about art assets might be used for like a future edition kind of thing for the MMO that got canceled. It kind of ends on a sour note, which is kind of a bummer.
Really?
World of Darkness is doomed kind of thing, you know? And now you're just like, no. But
it is crazy because it is like this kind of zeitgeist that kind of came about like in the 90s, like before I was really even into like I mean, like, let's be honest here. I was born 93. I was 7 when the 90s ended, so it's not like it's not like I was sitting at home looking through World of Darkness books going, yeah, this is my shit. I was, you know.
I'm so dark, Mom.
I'm dark. I will say,
the darkest first grader.
Oh my God! You know what? I'm gonna tell because I think we're gonna have enough time for all this, but I'm gonna tell a personal anecdote now. Do you know that Underworld? So I saw Underworld. I think it was like 7 or 8. I saw Underworld, and we would draw comics, and so I started drawing comics about like my very own death dealer, like I don't want to call it my OC because that was just like what my character, like that's just what I did is I drew my friends and us and like adventures. And so I remember I called it like Death Dealer Black, and my parents found it and they were like, what is this? Like, are you okay? And it was like, why are you using words like Death Dealer and like drawing your friends with like guns and like long black capes? And I was like, oh no, it's the movie. They were vampires. Well,
never tell them the movie. They'll never make you watch it again. Oh, that's super funny, man.
I know. So I was actually exposed to it, and I was exposed to the vampires by a very young age.
So how did that turn out with the folks? Did they understand, or were they just kind of like, okay, cool?
They were like, don't draw this anymore. I honestly used to get trouble all the time for drawing art. Like I remember I went through Dragon Ball Z, like I love Dragon Ball Z, so I would draw people like fighting with the huge muscles and like whatever. And then I remember I drew, I think it was like Frieza or Majin Buu holding up the ball, which they would do with the finger, but I accidentally did the middle finger. And and I got like in so much in trouble. But I was like, whatever. I turned out fine. Parents, let your kids draw medium. If they draw people, if they draw, death dealers and stuff like that, it should be all right. I knew I wasn't a vampire. Sometimes maybe as a kid, maybe sometimes I thought I was, but it's fine. There's honestly a lot of like weird tidbits from my childhood I could probably go on a rant about, but that's for another deep dive.
Right?
For another day.
Now look where he is, Mom. Now he runs the vampire show.
Well, I got my own show, Mom, my own soapbox platform with my 10 to 20 viewers every week.
Oh yeah.
Hey, we were cruising on a good 10 viewers now. We're down to 10. That's the lowest it's been. But we are just on a break. Send this to your friends. We were at 20 before.
We were. It was pretty cool.
That was amazing. Yeah, that's some good progress. I would really like to see. It's 30. 30 would be good.
That's okay. Right. Video on demand.
Video, yeah, VODs. Definitely give it a watch.
It's a busy night. There's busy things happening in the world.
It is, yes. And we're not going to directly refer to them because people do need a break. And we understand that. But we're friends here. We love you. Rick loves you. Deep Dive loves you. Deep
He's
Dive is
speaking
love.
for me. You disgust me. All of you. I'm just kidding.
Deep Dive is life. You can never leave the Deep Dive, but why would you want to?
Good. I'm glad this is a very welcome distraction. We do care. You know, we have an amazing community. Nick's regular size mom, Bobby, thanks for joining us. Puppy Lover and chat. A bunch of great people joining us today who are friends of ours, some new friends, and you know, we play some cool games together, all of us. Sometimes at different tables, but we like to hear all about it. You guys are all extremely valued and welcome members of our community. And hey, you could be sitting in this chair because you ran an awesome chronicle and Nick wants to talk to you. He probably wants to talk to you anyway. So, hey.
I'm always down to talk to people. I love talking to people.
He's got the gift of gab. Thank you for joining us and listening to me ramble about this amazing game with some great people. Let's have some fun and talk about some more vampire.
I might tear up just for my gift of gab comment. That's great. I pride myself in trying to be a better interviewer each day.
Your questions rule, dude. They're great.
Yeah, that's just because show notes, man.
Well, you made them.
I did. Okay, I did. You know, I just kind of go through. I honestly, no, you know what? I'm not going to reveal my process. I refuse to. Well, all right,
brother.
Let's get back to. I almost went English for a second. What are you doing over there, you little freak? It's time to go British snap into a Slim Jim into the next deep dive question.
Bonesaw's ready.
Bonesaw's ready. He's got you for 3 whole minutes. 3 minutes of playtime. I do that in my regular day. I used to, last anecdote, I swear, and then I'll jump into the question. I used to work at a call center, and legitimately, we would we would put people on hold or mute them, and we would just look over at each other because we would have our own like separate cubicles, and we would just do the Bonesaw impression to each other. And I'd be like, "Who are you talking over there, you little freak?" And you got to do the fingers too when you do Macho Man. Yeah. You just have to. It doesn't work without it.
We would do the Mortal Kombat movie from like '94. The warehouse job. We used to have. Be like, use the element which brings life. You know, you got a soulless mind. You know, it's crazy shit.
Soul is mine.
And you know, Christopher Lambert again for coming into the show here as Raiden with his totally campy lines. Yeah.
And he absolutely wanted to do that movie too. Like his agent was like, this isn't gonna work, and he's like, no, I will like waive a percentage of my fee off if you cast me in this movie, but I want to be Raiden.
Yeah, he's like, I'm a nerd, and you're not going to stop me because I have star power. God bless him. Whatever bless him.
I like the Mortal Kombat movie. I think that's a good movie.
It's campy. It's classic.
Yeah, camp's not bad.
I'm still impressed with how they pulled off Goro. My God.
Never mind. That's a lot of CG.
That was practical effects, wasn't it?
Was it? Man, I watched a whole documentary on this shit. I can't even remember that. What the hell?
That was like a small person on top of somebody else.
It was 3 children on top of each other.
It was
doing that thing for the little rascals.
3 gnomes in a Goro costume.
Now to act. What?
One more thing. Me and my good friend Todd would always do the funniest part of the whole movie to me is the 2 knucklehead guys who are watching the Goro fight. And they're just like oiled up, muscly, and they're like, yeah, Goro! Like, and they do it like 2 or 3 times, and it's just like, who the hell are these guys and why are they so into Goro?
Dude, the crazy extras. That was
yeah. Oh,
that's staple of the late 90s, early 2000s, honestly. All right. So, we're gonna talk about lore. Actually, we're not, because the lore of Vampire the Masquerade is so massive and intricate that we would need 5 more deep dives. And honestly, there's so many people out there that you could watch that do it better than we honestly could in like an hour. Like, you could go watch The Primogen. You could go watch 20 Years of Vampire. That's all I can really think of. What? 25 years. 25 years. Holy shit, I excluded an entire 5 years of them. 25 years of Vampire.
Lore by Night.
Yes, Lore by Night.
Podcast by Night.
You just keep naming them.
Well, they're not as active as they used to be, but they're wonderful people. Yeah, I mean, they're the ones that really talk about the lore a lot, and they do great. So check them out. If you guys want to talk about lore with me, you know where to find me at Death Malkavian, and you can talk my head off because I love the lore. We have a whole channel for it in their Discord.
What's his name? What's it? Oh my god. He definitely makes live streams. What is his...
Nathan Seaver?
Is it the... Nathan Seaver's one. The Salubari Cat? Or that's for Chronicles.
Salubari Cat.
Yeah, Salubari Cat.
Yeah.
He does some great stuff. Definitely not as much anymore. Mainly it's all games, but he'll do the Chronicle Doctor, which I think, and he'll go over lore briefly, and I think those are awesome to kind of just like kind of sit in on.
What's the other one? I feel really bad because he, I think he joined us at PAX East. He's got the little skeleton Grim Reaper logo, and he does like he covers game stuff.
Oh my god.
His actual name is Chris. Oh jeez. Well, I'll figure it out. Anyway.
And then we'll link it to them. But like, yeah, like, and these are all people that are, you know, they're all close friends. They've all been on the, you know, maybe not this show, but they're all on the show. We just played with the Primogen at SafeCon, and he was fucking great. So
Christian's a great guy.
Oh yeah.
He's such a good dude, and really cares about the community, cares about games and running games. And we have a lot in common. He's very much into like promoting a good culture with the community. So we see eye to eye on a lot. Big shout out to the Primogen. Wonderful, wonderful individual.
And you know what? I'm going to say big shout out to Kindred. I know I said it a lot last game, but Kindred's actually probably was in the chat earlier, so I assume he's still here. Or assume they're still here. They're still here. Kindred, you're awesome. You make good stuff. I love your notes. Philly by Night. I can't wait for it. You should definitely release it as a paid book, though, because you deserve that. You deserve funds.
You do, yeah.
Fuck it, we all deserve to be rich. Let's continue on. Okay, so we're not going to deep into the lore, but I'm still going to pick your brain about certain things, if that's all right.
All right, yeah, hell yeah.
What are some of the deeper cuts of the lore that, in your mind, kind of go unused, whether it's from the current edition of V5 or the older editions, or even Vampire the Requiem? What's something that we often just miss and like is just horribly not utilized?
I think the line developers have thrown in Thin Bloods quite a bit, and I don't think enough storytellers use them or utilize them in their stories. And I think it's because the thing with the clans is so rich and has so much great potential that we just don't typically stray from that too often. You know, the Second Inquisition being a great new enemy, they're fantastic to add in Chronicles. Whereas, you know, in V20, you'd have Summon Hunters, you'd have Society of Leopold, things like that. But I feel like even in this new edition, Thin Bloods kind of get pushed to the side a little bit. You know, and The Time of Thin Blood was a revised line book that was actually really good. So I honestly think they could probably be an even bigger threat than the Inquisition. And one group that does really great at showcasing good storytelling with a Thin Blood character is Red Moon Role Playing's No Man is an Island, with the character of Gabriel Ellis, who is kind of like a special affairs division version of like kind of like an MI6 kind of thing, targeting terrorists and stuff like that. She becomes a Thin Blood, doesn't even really know quite what she is. They see it as all like a vampiric infection, right? So they consider her like a stage 1, which frankly, they're still figuring out themselves. They're getting very little information from the actual SI. It's all kind of happening, right? They're all figuring it out for the first time. So, but seeing it from her perspective, and she's still on this team, finding out about the world and Kindred, you know, V5 is a great setting scenario to run games that are street level, very personal, and very like close to the heart, you know? So having, I even conceptualized doing a session where one or two people are thin bloods and the rest are mortals, and they're trying to figure out what happened to their friends. Like, what's this change they're going through? Maybe they're not as connected to the world of darkness as they expect, but they have to find out what's going on because they figure if they make too much noise, they'll come for them. Like, even the government, I mean, without knowing anything about the world of darkness, if you knew a thin blood, you would not go to a hospital, right? Because the first thing they would do is you'd be like, oh, they're going to dissect you in a lab and try to kill you or weaponize you for the military. You know, people come up with these crazy and sometimes very real scenarios that play out through the head of what to expect, right? So it's it would be fun to do a short little chronicle about something like that. So thin bloods, caitiffs even sometimes are underutilized. The Black Hand, the section of the Sabbat, kind of like the Sabbat special forces, things like that, I think are usually underutilized. Yeah, I think the Giovanni in V20 was not used to their full potential. In V5, you know, we get Cult of the Blood Gods coming out, and the Hakata, they've done some great work with. I think it's going to make, and I've seen a lot of people run Hikata characters of all different flavors and factions and family intricacies with that. So I think that was a really important thing to put into the line. Yeah, as our friend Regular Size Mom says, Putinesca. A lot of love for that crazy branch.
Which is that's all I ever hear about too. Whenever I hear about like the Giovanni and like the related stuff, it's always about the Putanescas. And I was like, well, does anyone ever just do the regular branch, or it's always just like, because like there's only like 3 paragraphs I feel ever said about them. They're not like a really explored part of the family, but
yeah, well, I mean, in the old lore, not so much. In Cults of the Blood Gods, they dive into it a little bit further. I think they added some really cool stuff about the Duncern, the Children of, or the Pisanob, and a couple of the others. The Samedi revisions make them playable without being rotting, so that's kind of neat. So I mean, some of those things that were underutilized, V5 is putting back into the spotlight, which is kind of nice. I always thought the Giovanni could have been a much bigger player. Mm-hmm. You know, they were always seen as an independent clan, which makes you think them kind of small. And I like that they're kind of being seen as another faction now unto themselves. So, but other than that, yeah, those are some of the things I think have been underutilized in the World of Darkness.
That's a good
Definitely
list.
What's up?
So that's a good list.
Yeah, even the followers of Set, I think, get run off as being like, oh, they're the shady drug dealers. You know, they are. They absolutely are.
Yeah.
But what happens when you allow them to succeed? You know, if their whole thing is about corruption and to the point of tearing down entire cities and in different factions. You know, they hold such a long grudge as to try and bring down what they consider the Aeons, the enemies of Set, who are like some of the high clans. They do so in such a seductive manner that, you know, people typically only throw a couple of them in a chronicle and like they can get avoided. It's fun to see them succeed and what that looks like. Are the players for it? Are they against it? What does the domain think about it? Like, I think Constantinople by Night made the Setites actually bigger than a lot of the other books ever had. Like Michael, the patriarch, allowed, I think his name was Kaital, and he was like a scion of his own branch family, like a big part of the city. And he convinced this 4th generation Methuselah that, you know, the snake in Eden didn't come from the garden, it came from beyond. You know, that temptation needs to be there to test this dream you had, this dream of Constantinople being this place that's like heaven on earth where vampires and humans can intermingle and you can be worshipped. That's great, but if you're not putting it to the test, then is it really a dream? You know, So he allowed this terrible snake into his garden, and oh my god, they wreaked some havoc. In fact, I think most of it came down because of the amount of power and influence the Sadites have in that entire chronicle. So interesting stuff. I'd love to see people utilize that aspect of the story a lot more and take the Sadites much more seriously as a threat.
I do like that. I love calling them by their name in V5, the Ministry. I love how they're almost like, if you want to play La Sombra and you want to play more of that religion, but you don't want to have to delve into that Sabbat level of like terror, the Ministry is a really good kind of secondary option, because they really are the spiritual core of all these other clans. They're even though they do muddle themselves with like the drug dealing and all the underhanded, the street.
Some do.
Some, yeah. But at their core, they're a religion or a cult or something in between. We're not sure of yet. I think that's pretty fucking interesting.
I love playing Sadites, dude.
That should be that.
So
Max character. Ministry for sure. So. So something we kind of touched on before, but I want to kind of grill you a little bit more on it.
Yeah.
What does it mean to be a caitiff other than the generic, oh, I'm a clanless vampire?
It means you're always in danger. Can caitiff have potential? They are very much like Cain, right? Cain had all the disciplines. He's the proto vampire. He had it all. So the fact that caitiff could literally have anything, they learn disciplines much quicker. They're dangerous. Being an outsider in a world that's literally comprised of cliques of powerful ancient beings is a death sentence waiting to happen. Because there's so much in the blood of who you are and where you fit that will never go away. And not having that, how can you really trust them? That's what every clan would say. How do you know they won't betray you? They don't have any real tie. At least this Toreador, who we know, he may have been cast out by his sire. He doesn't even know his parent clan. But at the same time, he could have that connection eventually. That caitiff? No, never. No one's going to miss him. We can use him like a pawn, whatever. The Sabbat will take him. They'll call him a pander. They say that he's got folk clan rights, but it's not La Sombra. Sorry. And that's the attitude they all have on it. They kind of spit on the little guy, Sometimes they're even marked and outright killed out of being a sign of Gehenna. So it's, they are even included in the World of Darkness book, Orphans, which is kind of like every different game line had an outsider. And there's some good reading material on that one for how to play a caitiff. It's interesting. There have actually been some pretty well-known caitiffs in the World of Darkness. Like one of them is a prince of a city, and I think he's been the prince of this particular city for several thousand years. It's Cairo by night. And I think a lot of other caitiff characters have actually flocked to that location simply because they're not going to be instantly put to death there. And a lot of the other elder vampires don't screw with him because he's an elder and he's a caitiff. Kind of like their worst nightmare, like something that should never have happened, but did. Right? So, yeah. I guess if you're playing a caitiff, embrace that fear. Make them think that you have a ton of disciplines under your belt. Fake it if you have to. And, yeah.
Infinite possibilities.
Otherwise, don't show any weakness because you'll be toast.
Everyone's enemy and no one's friend. Life of the caitiff.
Hey, and thank you, Alexander, for the raid. Party of 9. Welcome.
Awesome.
To our fantastic deep dive on Vampire the Masquerade. We're happy to have you join us.
How about B5? All right, so we're talking about catives. What in your mind? And I feel like I already know what I'm about to say because I feel like I said it was the Ministry. But what in your mind? What's the most like underutilized clan? What's the clan that gets played the least that you say?
I mean, maybe the Ministry, but since V5, I've honestly seen a ton of people try them out for the first time. Whereas in other editions, not at all. So, I mean, it's clearly the Ravnos because they're not even in V5 yet.
Okay. I can give you that, but what about the playable ones right now, as of right now?
The playable ones, Banu Hakim, maybe.
Okay.
It's weird. I either see no one playing a Banu Hakim, or I think I joined a play-by-post server with some friends a while ago, and I was like, I'm going to make a Banu Hakim because no one's going to make one. And then there must have been 4 other people that had the same idea, and suddenly we were the largest clan in the city. So it was like, whoops, that wasn't intentional. Yeah, but Banu Hakim, they're hard to understand because we are Westerners, and they have a very Eastern and Middle Eastern mentality and culture. And sometimes it doesn't always translate well, or it's seen as off-putting, whether it's it requires more research or, because like we talked about earlier, not everyone just wants to be like, well, I'm going to be a Banu Hakim, so I'm going to be a ninja. A lot of people don't want to play to stereotypes, or they want to break the mold and do something interesting and new or creative. So it's somewhat harder sometimes to think of what a modern Banu Hakim would look like in the West. I think our friend Marchosius sent me a character sheet one time. We might even use someday, where he was a taxi cab driver, Banu Hakim, who was he was kind of like the driver for like a hitman kind of thing. He was like the getaway guy, and he was just good at this job, and eventually they embraced him. Kind of brought him into the family. But is he a combatant? Not really. But they felt they owed him a solid one, I guess. So yeah, maybe the Banu Hakim. I don't know. What do you think? What are some of the clans you don't see getting as much love as the others, especially in V5? Besides, I'd say obviously the Thin Bloods, but
yeah. See, and I feel like I see a lot of people play the Thin Bloods, just because of like the different one. But the Banu Hakim, that's a good one. Although, see, I always trip up and I call them by the wrong name, or the name that they hate in game. The Asamites. You get a lot of people that really will grind your gears if you call them that. The Ministry is like the most played I see. Like, honestly, the most played I see are the Ventru, the Bruja, the Toreador, and then I'm starting to see an increase in La Sombra, but I would even say that the Gangrel would be the 4th most played. But yeah, I would agree with you. The Banu Hakim is definitely one, and I think that the Ministry is also another issue. I don't see a lot of people playing the Tremere.
Interesting. And it's strange. I feel like they have such a bigger appeal in V5 than they ever did, at least for me. But
yeah, I've never. Yeah, I think it's strange that so Nyx is saying that they don't see a lot of the Ventru, and I think that's all I see. But that's just because that's like your classic, that's what you want to be. That's the vampire that everyone knows is this, the conniving, scheming seductor of the night.
They're not. I do not see the Ventru as being connivers, sneaky people. I know they are, but to me, that's the sides. Or the Malkavians.
I almost started speeding out Vampire the Requiem clans for a second. Be like, yeah, I haven't seen the Deva around in a while. I wonder
what have happened to them?
That's for a different deep dive. I'll drag Ian on here and pick his brain for it.
Right on.
We need more Vampire the Requiem. It's a good system. It's a great system. But we're here for the Masquerade. So we're about to get a little bit real for a second.
All right.
How would real life events No, actually, not even. I'm gonna ask. How would realize? So specifically, how would you handle the pandemic and the Vampire the Masquerade? And a second part of the question: what other real life events have you experienced or just seen that you want to tie into Vampire the Masquerade? Either explain them using lore, or
Sure.
just have them occurring in game.
So with the pandemic, I mean, obviously harder to feed if you're a siren or a scene queen because those scenes are dead, and the dating pool is pretty shallow with trying to social isolate, right? So to some kindred, it's going to be extremely difficult. Even Osiris, I think, would be very difficult. Alley Cat, still possible. You get people kind of driving around, or jogging around at night, and being distant from other people, probably easier to pick them out, right? So I think it's going to be more beneficial for some feeding types and harder for others. I think the mask thing definitely would help kindred life, especially those who have been deemed as walking blank bodies. Little more anonymity, especially for the Nosferatu. They're probably living the dream right now, especially if this continues to be like a thing that people just do. Even after we have a vaccine, people are going to be a lot more health conscious. It's not going to be as odd to see someone wearing a mask anymore. In life, it's even if it's all over, people are going to be like, oh, that person's just really germophobic, or maybe they have a health condition and they're just being considerate, whatever. Nosferatu finally able to walk around the ones that are not like hideous, right? The ones that are hideous, hoodie and a mask, you can kind of get around again.
Yeah.
So but as far as real life events working into VTM, I think it's important to stay tuned to, if you're running a chronicle in a certain setting, keep an eye on the local news and see what inspires you. I think when we were running Onyx PathCon and I did a V5 game a couple of weeks before, our friend Mike Thomasek Hollywood, who's a writer for Chicago by Night and some other things in V5, he lives in Chicago, and he was posting this picture of the Sears Tower, and I guess the basement flooded, and they had to cut the power to do some kind of repair on the power lines. So the entire tower itself was completely black, which was bizarre because it was kind of like dusk, like behind me in the picture I've got right here. And all the other buildings are lit up, and there's still some kind of light in the sky, but it's kind of getting dusk. The entire tower was so black, it just looked like a giant black obelisk, right? And I even joked around, I'm like, this is what happens when you let the La Sombra into the fucking Camarilla, because the car's covered in shadow. But I ended up basing that entire scenario on the idea of like, oh, that'd be really cool if like an entire building like that had power cut to it while a crazy business meeting was going on with Kindred.
And now
talk about everyone grabbing their guns at once and shit just going south. And that's what the scenario was. And it was all because I saw something that was visually cool in real life, and I kind of based it off that. I even think I had like options, right? Depending on how the conversations went and the dialogue, it was like, okay, we have X, Y, and Z who could have been the different culprits for this entire scenario. There was the Ventrue, the Nosferatu, and then like a couple of others that are tied into the actual lore of Chicago by Night. Yeah. And then I had a fifth that was literally, it was just a power outage and everyone jumped to conclusions and now people are dead. Which kind of seems like a storyteller cop-out, but it's also very real. So I kept that ace up my sleeve in case I needed a curveball.
I got you. Just like watch the news, save some stuff to your mental bank about it, and just
oh yeah,
go over there.
I even take pictures of places I go, like I'll see a rundown building with some really cool graffiti on it. In fact, one of them locally to me just got covered up, and I was a little bummed because it looked like this Nosferatu looking face. It almost looked like a Green Goblin mask from the first Spider-Man movie. And I might have grabbed a picture of it before they painted over it, but I was like, shit, that looks like Nosferatu graffiti. And even the building's all run down and shit. It was like, oh man, I need to use that and take a picture of it at night and then use it as a scene.
Like think about the holiday that just passed, like Halloween. Like as a Nos, it could be the one night of the year you can go out and just look yourself, and no one would say anything.
Yeah, or just hang out in Georgia where they're filming The Walking Dead. And you're an old school Semitic, you'd be fine. You might even get paid.
It's an extra until you start draining the other ones.
Don't share what you eat, Semitic.
All right, so that's enough about the lore. I know people want us to continue on with this, but we just be here too long, and I'm not gonna. And I think those are the interesting questions I really wanted to kind of your mind for. Now we're gonna do a little section on the show that's kind of happened on all our deep dives, with the exception of Monster Arch, just because it only has that one book. But we're gonna call this the book and first GM rundown. So the books we have are Vampire the Masquerade, obviously the core rule book. How important do you recommend the Camarilla and the Anarch source books? How important are they to purchasing them?
I think I talked about this last week where I read through both of them and I liked them. They're very story heavy and not so much needed for mechanics. So if you're just looking to use it and play and not read so much about the world, you can get by with the core. But I think the Camarilla book is actually written really well. It's from the perspective of Victoria Ash, and the whole thing does, they had the revised book for a guide to the Camarilla, and it's good. It doesn't paint as good of a picture of what the Camarilla actually is as the V5 one does. I think it nails the new viewpoint as how they are like an elitist group of oligarchs. They're like an Illuminati of vampires. They are the elite of the elite. And the book kind of flavors the perspective of the whole thing. So if you're using them in any way, I definitely recommend reading through the whole thing and just letting that sink in and understanding what they really are. Because it's been such an ongoing thing in this entire series and the lore where it's like, okay, well that's the Richie Rich club that you can join, and they're very hoity-toity. Vampire easy mode, right? It's a little different in V5. They're not the good guys anymore. Maybe they never were. It shows that side to them that now they're not as afraid to say. The Masquerade needs to be taken more seriously, and they're closing doors on people, and it's a very interesting change in the lore. And I think with the meta plot, it's more relative to have the Camarilla book than it is the Anarch. But at the same time, the Anarch book is great because it's got the Setites in it. So that's my bias.
so buy it if you want the ministry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then we have books such as, obviously, Cult of the Blood Gods are coming out, Chicago by Night. Very different beasts in different types of books than the Anarch and Camarilla book.
Oh, yeah.
Specific settings, specific ways to play them. What do you recommend these books, or give us kind of run down your thoughts on these two books?
Cult and Chicago by Night are must-haves. Chicago by Night, if you're making a chronicle, even has a great section on developing and taking areas of your city and really fleshing them out, as far as the city is like another character. It shows the amount of love and dedication and attention to detail that a storyteller should have when making a city or even region specific chronicle. The way the characters are laid out and the questions they ask and answer for each one of their NPCs is flawless, spot on. The way the book is set up can even instruct you and give you a skeleton to base your own chronicle off of in a much easier way. I think Nick, you might have been in on this one for VH Virtual HorrorCon.
I was just about to say that. It was my favorite panel of the one of my favorite panels. I wasn't even on it, but that was the panel that introduced me to Mare and Mike, both of them, and I love them both to death.
And he talked quite a bit about the section that he made about helping you to kind of design that part of the city. So if anyone ever had any questions, by all means, he's definitely a good resource to look out and ask questions to. So bomb his inbox. He's a lovely gentleman. He's one of a kind. Just such a good man, but very bright. And that book is totally worth it. You know, it's got the somber in it too. And the sacrifice is a scenario that was written by our friend Clara Hosher Herbal, which we've talked about quite a bit, and a lot of other communities have talked about that particular scenario being one of the modules, maybe one of the first modules that the line has ever put out that has not been extremely railroaded. It gives you a lot of options. It's after reading a lot of D&D modules and how the later ones kind of branch out and give a little more sandboxy feel. It's really well written. It's very intelligent, and if you're looking to start something and feel confident about running a story that people have raved about, ranted about, and will enjoy, that's definitely one you can run. And I don't see how you could falter on that. You know, it's everything in the Chicago by Night book to run a chronicle is there for you. I don't feel like they missed or overlooked anything. It's fantastic. It's a must-have. The characters in that too. I go back and reread them all the time.
Chicago by Night. Oh my god,
fascinating. And I mean, this is the 3rd edition for Chicago by Night. Plus, they did a Requiem one for Chicago, but with obviously a different world. So I mean, there are some characters who have survived up until the 3rd edition, and a lot of new characters who are just really fascinating. It's kind of cool to see the evolution of some of them, and to see how others have changed, or even the new people are just dynamic. It can help you really stir the creative juices, and make you like take a look at your own NPCs and say, I feel like there could be more here, or what you did right. And sometimes, as far as Cult of the Blood Gods, we've got the manuscript. We don't have the fully complete book yet, which the artwork that we have seen has been jaw-dropping. I mean, Chicago by Night artwork is fantastic too. But Cult of the Blood Gods, the art direction on that just looks like it's going to be breathtaking. The love they put into Heakata is great. It gets into the Nephilim, the children of Michael from Constantinople and the Dream. That's something that never was really covered before, which is interesting. We hear about the lore with Mithras quite a bit, him being a huge deal, but they never really got into a lot of the religious aspects to any of these kindred things that were talked about for so long as being such a vital part of kindred existence. This is the first time where they have a book about religions, and now I think Onyx Path has even greenlit or had the green light to write one separate on kindred religions, which would be really interesting. But they do a deep dive into the Church of Set, the Church of Cain, the Bahari, and like the Lilith cults and things. It's really great. They even have a large section on how to create your own kindred cult. And a lot of the lore sheets in this book have so much additional mechanical flavor. There's even some new powers depending on what clan you're kind of looking into. The followers of Set have some really cool new abilities that I loved. One of them, I think it's you makes it so you dominate someone and they can't find the exit. All right, it's like the maze of the mind. You dominate someone and all of a sudden it's like it's just a bunch of walls, dude. Oh crap, you can't even get out. And Love's True Face, which if you know someone that they fear or that they love and you target them, you can make it look like Nick's madly in love with this woman, and all of a sudden she goes to the bathroom and some Suddite knocks her out and ties her up, and then she comes marching out back and gets all of Nick's credit card information and walks out the door and then drains his entire account simply because
that's usually how it goes for me, honestly.
That's a typical Saturday night for Nick. The poor bastard. So there's lots of cool things in Cult of the Blood Gods that I cannot wait to get the physical copy in my hands.
That's great. And honestly, it's weird because you kind of see the difference between writing between say Modifius and then say Onyx Path, because like it was Onyx Path that made Chicago by Night and Cult of the Blood Gods, and then Modifius they did the rest of them, right?
Modifius only put out The Fall of London. I know that they printed
V5 and the Cambrian Anarch books,
right? But the Cambrian Anarch books were also arranged by Free League, and a bunch of freelance writers working for White Wolf at the time, and possibly Paradox involvement. But I mean, I think The Fall of London was the only one that's come out so far that's pretty much been specifically had Modifius with a larger involvement into the creative process. It's something that I think Matthew Dawkins originally pitched and ran the production for, but no, I've got things to say about The Fall of London.
Yeah, that's actually that's the next question too, because that's honestly the last book on our list, because I won't lie, I think that the strongest books of the supplements, specifically, if we're not counting obviously the V5 core book, I think the strongest book is Chicago by Night and Cult of the Blood Gods. I absolutely, yeah. But then you get Fall of London, which it's an interesting beast because it's not a supplement, it's a module, which it's kind of unheard of for the vampire line having like modules. So definitely more in traditional, like you'll see these modules more like in traditionally like D&D and Pathfinder and these other things. But how do you feel that like an official release module for Vampire that isn't just like something in the back of like akin to like the Sacrifice?
I mean, it just needs to be done well. It's difficult. You're tackling a beast that is London, right? And right from the get-go with the launch of the line, it might even say it in the core book somewhere, but we were told, or maybe it was Beckett's Jihad Diary, London got hit so hard by the Second Inquisition that all kindred presumed to be living there were dead.
Yeah, it was the ground zero for the Second Inquisition.
Yeah, like the MI6 literally dragged them out of their havens and killed some elders in broad daylight, kind of thing.
And they're antediluvian. They killed Mithra.
Yep, Mithras also bit the dust, in a manner of speaking. No spoilers. Maybe not, right? So,
yeah, that's an awesome thing the book put forward. It's like, is Mithra, does he escape? Is he real? Does he just fake his own death? What happens?
So, I mean, the book is about kind of restoring him to full power. And it's got Roger Camden, who is the Cappadocian who survived the Giovanni Hans and is extremely close with Mithras, even in a relational sense. But you know, it was pitched and I think developed by our friend Matthew Dawkins, and the vision of it's good. I think the execution of it seems a little rushed. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Reading through it, you know, things get missed in editing, but in this case, it seems like there were some things with the character sheets that the math doesn't add up right.
Yeah.
You know, and I found some errors throughout it, but you know, it's a book. We've got it. It's V5, and I just try to be supportive of the line, and you know, the stuff that's good in it is really good, and you got to give props to the people that developed it. It probably could have spent a little more time before being released. I think, like I said, it was probably a little rushed at the time they were trying to get the product out. But you know, as a scenario, it's got some cool things to it. I like that it's got a mechanic that we can use in just about any vampire setting, where there's this weird escalation of the SI, where like if certain things happen, the Masquerade threat level kind of rises.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a reactionary response. Like if it gets up to level 2, this is what you can expect from the SI, and so on and so forth, to the point where it's like a police state lockdown, like martial law.
Yeah, like they got tanks and they got choppers.
Yeah.
And they got
So I mean, if you're running that kind of chronicle and you want to focus on that and have that be the real coup de grace moment, that could be really, really epic for players to run through. And it's kind of like, hey, expect to die kind of thing. But I mean, they've got some cool things in there. I liked how and it's weird. It's like the chicken and the egg, right? I don't know which one came first, but there are characters in that are based. They're second edition characters. Yeah, Zach Roll says that was a great mechanic for the Second Inquisition to take over the city. Absolutely. Some of the characters from Red Moon Role-Playing's No Man is an Island are actually characters that you can find as NPCs that are SI for the Fall of London book. So seeing them in there was pretty cool, because I love that chronicle, and being able to take those characters and play with them, or include them in a chronicle, or even base some of your own Second Inquisition, realizing that these are also NPCs. These are people. They have reasons for hunting kindred. They're not some masked boogeymen. They are personalities with families and weaknesses themselves. They're flawed individuals. They're not some super faith hunter, right? A lot of times they don't even know all of the answers. It's still a mystery to them. So to see them kind of like step through that process, and it adds a little more realism to the threat that is Second Inquisition.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, the Fall of London shows how devastatingly effective they can be. So it's a necessary book in the line. It's already out. I don't expect an errata for it. So we got to take what we got and use what we like, and what you don't like, just don't use. Like I say with every book.
Honestly, I think one of the things I've talked about it a few times on stream, not necessarily on the deep dive though. What I really want to use the Fall of London for is I really want to run a Second Inquisition game. Like somehow like just jury rig, maybe run Hunter the Vigil, or Hunter the Reckoning. You know, even though the lore, it's different systems, but just use the lore of E5 and run, because like the Fall of London, when you read it, it's kind of like this is the it doesn't, even if you win, you don't actually win. You know, right. you win by leaving everything in shambles, and it's like this really dark, depressing moment where. But if you play it from the Inquisition's point of view, it's just like this triumphant like victory.
Good success.
It's this push, and you like, you know, can you imagine just playing on the Second Inquisition as these soldiers or these agents, and like the end of the book, and it's just like, yes, you have successfully in your head driven every kindred from London, and you know, have dealt this huge blow.
Yeah, but I'm awful, and I would have it like one of the last kindred you pull out of a building is some relative of yours.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, yeah, bittersweet victory. Yeah. It's gotta be. And that's kind of gonna lead into my next question, because and you know what? I'm gonna answer it before you even answer it, because this is my show and I decide how to do things here.
Cheater.
So my question would be, is there anything lacking from the current supplements that like to see filled? And my thing would be, I would love to see a book on the Second Inquisition. Like, I want to know how, as a GM, I play them.
Yeah.
But what do you think? What's missing out of the current supplement line?
The Sabbat.
The Sabbat. Yeah. Okay. I think that's an obvious one. Is there anything else?
The Sabbat in a way that makes them both terrifying but deeply spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Like we talked about last time, in depth, I think.
Oh, very in depth.
Making them scary, but making them playable, interesting, and fascinating.
They're this really like, they're a brotherhood, and they're almost like this really like intricate family.
Yeah. So I mean, aside from them, we desperately need the Zemits in V5.
I hate that you call it that. I'm so sad. Like,
what do you call them? Shamasei? Zemitsi?
Zemichis. But like, whenever someone's like the Zemits, I always think they're like talking about, oh yeah, the meats. The meats.
Might as well be the meats.
Yeah, the meats.
Weird salami, as I saw the meme going around. It's the best, by the way. If you don't know what we're talking about, there is the second edition of the Zemitsi core book, and he's like eating some kind of piece of flesh, and his fingers are all bloody. And I think it was Ian A. Watson, who's great at graphic design, changed the logo of Clan Zemitz, and instead it says weird salami. Google it if you can find it. It's freaking hilarious. But we need the Ravnos. Maybe we need the Ravnos. They were part of the game for so long. I feel like it would be a disservice to forget about them completely. But I feel like they need a complete overhaul. You know, and I agree with what Dawkins said a while back, where, you know, maybe we didn't really know the full Clan Ravnos kind of thing. And not do a full retcon, but maybe there was a lot more to them that we didn't understand. And it makes perfect sense. They were kind of like nomadic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it needs to be addressed. It's something that you can't just shy away from forever. And to have the full gambit of what's available to us in the lore, I feel like V5 will be incomplete until we get all of that love back into the game. More merits, more flaws. I think the comics are doing great, adding new lore sheets, new powers, new disciplines, new rituals. It's a great way to do it. And the comic is fantastic. So good writing there, and a reason to buy it for mechanic reasons. But other than that, the upcoming book on kindred religions and things like that, those are kind of things I definitely wanted to see come out for V5. Player's Guide we were supposed to get. We'll see what happens with that. I feel like that's a little more important than a Storyteller's Guide. I think the community has been really great about not only making their own content, but helping new people
understand it.
Yeah, find their path. I feel like there's a community now that didn't exist. Maybe it's because of the internet, but there's so many more people who are willing to help people try to storytell. And I don't know, maybe we don't need a Storyteller's Guide, but I don't make those financial decisions, so we'll see what happens.
What about a book called the Celebrate?
No, they're dead. They suck. No, I mean, I don't really. Oh, boo-hoo.
The three-eyed.
I think they'll show up, and I gotta say that because the Salubri Chantry cat guy will get mad at me, and I like him. So
well, that's, and then you could talk about what is it, Golconda.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't like true Bruja, so let's not get too crazy with it. But no, I mean, I could see the Salubri, the Bali. I would like to see them all, as long as they're done right and it's interesting. I'm all for it.
I'm not gonna lie. There was one book I thought you were gonna say, and you didn't say it. I'm really disappointed.
What is it?
You didn't bring up Dark Ages. That's like your little favorite thing. It is tradition that every con you do a V5 Dark Ages game. So I feel like it's strange that you're not sitting here just going, when are we getting our V5 Dark Ages setting book?
We don't need a V5 Dark Ages.
Why not? Why don't we need it?
Because you can take this lovely book and do what I did already and just run games set in Dark Ages with what you know about the Dark Ages. You just take a character sheet and you cross out firearms, you put in archery, a couple other things like legerdemain. You're good to go, man. There's nothing in Dark Ages that I haven't been able to run just by winging it as an ST. I mean, you can read the old Dark Ages books and they give you some good ideas about battlefield warfare and even like catapults, things like that. But they're honestly not too far off from the mechanics we have for V5 that we couldn't just adapt them. That being said, if they wanted to do a Dark Ages V5, I would hop on that. Like, my God, you couldn't stop me. I'd be pounding on that door every day. But I could see them doing a city book supplement and then just saying, buy the V5 core for those rules, having one brief chapter on what you need to convert to make it sense, like I just talked about, but then have a city setting book that
the Constantinople,
something like that, right? Where it's like, this is the life, this is the NPCs, these are what you could expect, this is what the world was like at the time. I know the Dark Ages line, they've had like, Jerusalem by Night, Iberia, Constantinople, but then they did one that was Dark Ages Europe, which was really cool because it got into a lot of the other smaller domains that we didn't hear so much about. I mean, Transylvania by Night was also huge. But
you would feel like that would be like the go-to for.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, it was not only Transylvania by Night, but they had the Transylvania Chronicles, which was 4 books. So we had 5 books just based on Transylvania alone. 6 if you count Dark Ages Europe, which talked about it too. But
then I would love to see like like Shanghai by Night or Beijing by Night, talk about the Jiangxi.
Yeah, or it's I don't know what they're going to do with V5 with the Kindred of the East.
You think they're going to just remake Kindred of the East by like as it is,
Kind
or?
of. No, I mean I hope it goes through some revisions. I like what Requiem did about having just different bloodlines of core clans. I even like what Kindred of the Ebony Kingdom did, where it was like, yeah, they're similar, they're a little different, they call themselves something different, they have different cultures, but they're not like a completely alien entity like the Kindred of the East, where they were like reanimated corpses with vengeful spirits, and they had different levels of hell. And I think like the balancing the yin yang thing with Kindred of the East kind of put people off. Even I read it and was like, oh Jesus, this is tough. But I don't know. I think it needs to be a little easier. Like I say, if you can't run it at a con and explain the concepts quickly enough to a group of strangers, then it's a hard game to sell. I think they need to simplify it a little bit. I would like to see them go, instead of just Dark Ages, maybe even go like Bronze Age, like Rome or something like that.
That'd be pretty cool.
I've been wanting to run one that was like ancient Mesopotamia for a long time.
Miria by night. Put it on the list. I'm down. All right. Well, I'm going to continue us a little bit forward. We only got half an hour left, and we still got a little bit to go, but I think we can knock it all out. So we talked about your love for Dark Ages, but so some people might not realize that you wrote an adventure for Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, along with Mark and Ian. Fatal Choices. Why don't you talk about how it was writing that, and what your idea, what was the themes you wanted to bring to that scenario?
It's tough, I kind of just wrote it because I wanted to write. I was writing a bunch of different scenarios that I wanted to run, and Fatal Choices became like, I think when V5 first launched, there was a lot of people who were like, oh, I saw a couple of people in the community being just like, I want to run this, but I don't have any players except like one guy. And at that point I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a scenario that you could run one-on-one before. So I was like, well, shit, I'm going to make one. So I kind of just did. And I wanted it to be from the point of embrace, but it to be unusual and strange. And like, I wanted to do something different than the traditional, I have a sire and he's going to instruct me in all these ways. I was like, no, you were on a date possibly with a kindred, or you got kidnapped and now you're being experimented on by people pumping alien blood into you to see what's going to happen and see how long it takes you to change. And you escape, and you can read it. It's on our website. Nick had posted the link.
Yep.
But I wanted to have a crash course into the V5 meta plot, something that would show the Second Inquisition, the Prince, the Sheriff, the intrigue, the ground level entry into horror, and the personal changes. Primarily, though, I wanted to show that this is a system where the choices you make throughout the Chronicle affect the outcome at the end. It's kind of like how the Egyptians view afterlife. Every single thing that you have ever done is weighed against a feather of truth. And if you say you didn't lie and all these things, but then you go before the judge, in this case the judge is the prince, and all of these witnesses who show up at the end are like, actually that was bullshit, Your Honor. You're either going to be accepted into kindred society, or you're going to be put to death right then and there. And I've had people who are like, hey, thanks for the free scenario, this is great. My players died, one of them lived. I'm like, wait, more than one? And we had people that were running this for multiple people, and I'm like, I didn't write it for that, but that's fantastic. You could use it with as many people as you want, I suppose. But I thought it'd be really neat to take something like this, sit down at a Barnes and Nobles, put this gorgeous book, and I've done this before, just put it up on the table, a couple character sheets, pen and paper. This is pre-COVID, obviously. And people just walk by, and I'd be writing notes for a session or ideas I had, enjoying a coffee or a beer, and people would be like, oh, what's this? And just sit down, talk to them, introduce them, and see if they want to play sometime. But if they do, I have a scenario ready to go, even if it was right then and there, just one-on-one. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I hope to releasing that into the wild would would help other people grow their confidence as storytellers. You know, people trying it for the first time, getting used to the system, but also like it's a one-on-one tool because I wanted to build community. You know, just because you only have one person interested and you can't get a huge group together, you get that one person and they have a good time, they're going to tell somebody else. And my hope was that would happen, and then you'd have 3 or 4 people ready to play. You know, getting them all at once can be a challenge, especially when you're an adult and you maybe have kids or a busy work life. So yeah, that was kind of the goal behind it. So I wrote it. It was maybe like 6 pages total of just all words, you know. And then I passed it on and showed Ian and Mark. And Mark made it gorgeous, which he makes everything gorgeous. He's like the King Midas of goddamn book design and art. And I was like, oh my God, this looks like an actual V5 thing now. Ian statted out some of the NPCs that I didn't think about doing, added some other cool flavor to it. And we released it. And I think, yeah, it's 20 pages. It's gorgeous. I printed a copy for myself that I've got in a nice little red binder. I might even have it right here. But I know I'm pretty proud of it.
I think it's very well written.
Thank you. You know, going back, I haven't really given a second look and being like, what would I change about it now? It's kind of like the kid I sent off to college. You know, it's too late to fix you. I already messed up all these things, and you're gonna pay for therapy now. You know, so if he passes college and has a good life, good luck, Fatal Choices. But yeah, my friend Chris Rogers is in the chat. Welcome, my friend. So yeah, I'm proud of it. I'd love to release more because I have so many one-shots. I'd like to release them and put them on our Gehenna Gaming thing, but there's still the hope someday that some of these things will be community content, like drive-through RPGs. So I'm holding on to a number of them. Others I've run at cons, like what Nick experienced. It's a scenario called The Abduction. I would love to make some of those prettied up and share them with the world sometime too. But hopefully in an era where I can get paid $5 for each one or something.
And you deserve that. You deserve that, and would honestly much more for the work that you put out and the work that you do.
Thanks.
We're winding down. We got about 10 to 20 minutes left, so I'm gonna have to, you know, I'm gonna ask you really quick. So you're running the same scenarios for conventions, but
Yeah.
how are you doing it with not losing steam across these multiple days? Because you just talked about convention days, and I just kind of want to prick your brain about that. Just about like,
Yeah.
you know, running the same thing over like 3 days of conventions, because you want to be unified.
Yeah, you know, when I went to PAX Unplugged, I had like 7 scenarios that I could have run. It was my first time running games at a convention ever.
Really?
Yeah. And I hadn't run too many. I mean, I ran 12 sessions of Salem before that and some other stuff. I ended up running like a 13-player game one time. And then I ran with Dan McDonald a huge event at a bar with like 20 plus people.
That's awesome.
Which is a madhouse, yeah. But it worked. People had fun, and I'll probably do it again someday. But yeah, I wasn't sure what to expect, so I used one scenario that I thought would go over well, and it seemed to be a real big hit. Everyone had a blast. So I just kept using it that weekend, because why fix something that's broken? You know, I already had like nerves a little bit running games for complete strangers. You know, it's different when you cultivate like people who are in your area that you play games with, and you're like, yeah, let's play. Sit down with complete strangers and not know what kind of personalities or people you have before you. It's tough. It's like you realize it's like you got to put on this like entertainer's hat. Like, this is an entertainment industry thing now. I am here to give these people a great experience, right? It's not just I'm running games for people I know. It's a weird juxtaposition. But hey, I took that scenario that I liked. We ran it. I actually haven't run that one since.
Really? So I was the last person. I was amongst
the
last people to play on that scenario.
Yep. I think you were.
I'm happy about that. I'm not gonna lie, just a little bit. I
Actually, no,
remember
I ran it once at PAX East as well.
because I remember you even talking to us. You're like, "Wow, you guys did stuff that no one else has done so far."
Yeah, every group did something. I think almost all the groups did something a little different. And yours, I think, was probably the wildest one. But
Oh, imitating the walkie. Yeah, that was that was a lot of fun. Um, yeah, and the cool thing about like convention games, it'll lead you to people that you never thought you would ever get to meet otherwise. I mean, it's such a chance meeting. Like, I'm gonna juxtapose this into the last question that I'm gonna ask you, but you know, that was our game. That was the game that we met at, and that was the game that brought me to Gehenna. And it's like, if we never played that game, if I never gotten to that final spot, who knows if I would be here doing this stream right now? Probably not. I'm like, who the fuck is this guy?
I don't know. Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad you did. And to answer like the how do you not lose steam doing this over and over when you're, I think Friday I ran like 4 games, 3 hours each, almost nonstop. That's a lot of talking for 12 hours after like what, driving down to Pennsylvania and like not sleeping much that first night. How did I not lose steam? Passion. Just passion for what we were doing and playing this game. And I like meeting new people. I'm a pretty friendly guy. And PAX and that experience of a con was really eye-opening. You know, I've been to comic conventions, like the old school ones where you go for comics, not so much like the Hollywood version now where it's about like film premieres. But that's cool too, but it's a different animal. It was really, really amazing to go to a gaming con, and everyone there was very much themselves, like having a great time, embracing their nerd culture, waving their nerd flag, and just like everyone was cool with it. It was truly bizarrely harmonious. You know, it was like a collective of people who all love the same thing that are enjoying it and celebrating it. You know, I've gotten that kind of experience going to like a Star Trek convention or sometimes anime stuff. I went to like Rhode Island Comic Con, and that was pretty cool too. But still, there's very differencing cultures of things that people like. You're still going to see a little bit of everything. With the gaming convention, it was like, no, we're here to just play. There's something about having that many people under one roof that are there to play. It was incredible. I mean, and to see the passion that some people had for a lot of the other systems that I have not played, that I've maybe never seen before. It was like kid in a candy shop. I met the people from Magpie and saw the different games that they were running across the table from us. And it was a great rate to just build and see this community. You know, and since then we became really good friends with Onyx Path, who were there, Magpie. The guys from Chaosium were really cool, and they're running Call of Cthulhu right next to us. And it was like, holy shit, we're running Call of Cthulhu next to these guys who practically write for Call of Cthulhu. This is wild. You know, I met Jason Carl in a game I was running for regular size mom who's in chat here. I mean, it was great. So I can't wait to do it again. That's the kind of stuff that as you're doing it, it keeps you going. Seeing the people enjoy. You were there too, Big Dad. Damn it.
It's crazy to think that all the people that I know now were just right there. And like, I can honestly think back, and I was thinking about this the other day. Like, I met Meredith. She was at the Onyx Path booth because I remember talking to someone that I'm pretty sure was her about Chicago by Night because they had the manuscript out and it looked beautiful.
I don't think it was her. I think that was Crystal Mazer.
Was it Crystal? I thought it was Crystal at first. I wasn't sure or not.
No, Crystal, Eddie Webb,
bad memory,
and Dixie were there. And
I feel like I would know if I talked to Dixie because the hair.
But and she's small. Yeah,
but and
no, they were a blast.
Right, I remember talking to you. I remember talking to Mark, and I remember seeing Ian, but Ian was just fucking tired and wiped by then, so he was not in a good mood. And I remember talking to Dan very briefly. So I'm gonna ask you this last question, and I want to put on some inspirational music while we do it because fuck it, it's
like Love Lists Us Up Where We Belong or something. Just call me Angel.
We have come through a long path. We have done a lot. 2-parters, 3 hours each, almost 6 hours of Vampire the Masquerade, and you have always kept a smile. You have always given us the hard answers to the hard questions, and we've climbed this mountain together. And I really feel a lot smarter for doing this episode, and I think this is the biggest audience we had yet. So I'm super happy for it. Consistently, we reached 20 viewers, whatever. That for me, that's a personal victory. I want you not only to tell me what you got going on, but before that, I need to know, how did you meet Mark and Ian? How did this all start? This Gehenna.
Mark was my dealer. Kidding. I met Ian playing locally. I was. It's funny that I'm running Star Trek on Saturday because I wanted to play role-playing games. I played Vampire like 10 years before and had a great time running a bunch of sessions. My Storyteller always had poor health, so it kind of fell apart. And so there was like a hiatus. I had my first kid, and had a lot of other life changes happening. I went through a divorce, things like that. But as my life kind of got back on track and I had other things going on, I was like, I really miss playing role-playing games, and I had so much fun doing that. It's such a great creative outlet. So I looked into like D&D. Nothing really came off the ground there. I had a lot of friends in the Star Trek community, and my friend Jim was running Star Trek Adventures, which just came out from Odysseus, and I was like, I'm a huge Trekkie, and I'm like, Star Trek is a role-playing game now? Hell yeah. And Jim ran a couple months, I think, for us with that, and we had a great time. We ended that whole scenario, and I think he ended up having like another child or something. At the time, his boys are like older now. But I was like, man, it'd be cool if I could find people to play Vampire with. I did a search on Facebook, found a local group. Ian was part of that group. So I remember the first time I met him, they were doing this weird, like, we had like 6 or 7 people, and Ian was one of the other players. They needed to like split the party, so Ian story told like one half, and the guy story told the other half, and I was stuck with Ian's half, which is fine, he was a great ST, but hit it off with these people real quick. Dan McDonald was one of them as well. We played through the sessions for quite a while. I think maybe half a year. Kind of ended, group changed, but me and Ian, Dan McDonald, all stayed really good friends. Dan ran a game for us for a little while. That was fun too. Then I started running games. And through all this, just getting closer and closer with Ian, sharing a lot of ideas. We were like, hey, we're all kind of like having ideas to run games. It'd be cool if we ran them into the same universe, right? So he was in the process of thinking about starting up the Providence game. I was thinking about doing the Salem, and I did. And then he ended up doing Providence as well. Dan McDonald was running one in Lowell. So we're like, we should have like a shared universe. That way our characters could bounce between, or if we pick up new people. At that point, we were like, V5's coming out. We're all really excited about it. We want to grow and introduce this game that we love to as many people as possible. So we really started scouting other people who played role-playing games to introduce them into playing horror gaming with us, because we loved it so much. I mean, I even made really shitty pamphlets that kind of like was a brief crash course into V5, and I am not good. I mean, I had to learn how to do that stuff, and I look back at it and I'm like, it was good for the time, but now Mark blows me out of the water with that stuff. So it's like, but we put some posters in some game stores. We talked about, and we did run games in different stores and bringing in people. We did the thing at the bar I was telling you about. But at one point, me and Ian were like, hey, you've got like 6 people playing. I've got 7 people playing. Let's do a crossover event with something I wrote. You write the other half, and we'll get them all together one night at Dan's house, Dan McDonald's, because he got a huge backyard. And let's all play like one game, like 2 different coteries meeting, in one city setting. And it was totally wild. And I forget, Mark basically did what I did. He did an online search to see who was playing. And he found us, and I guess he was following us for a little while and was like, can I just make a character and show up? And we were like, hell yeah. And another guy named Greg, who's part of our community, did that too. So they kind of joined us on the wild ride, had a blast, hit it off with Mark. And I think he basically was just like, hey, so you're writing like a one-on-one scenario. I think this is really how we got connected with Mark. He took Fatal Choices and made it look awesome, and then started doing just random art promotion or art stuff for us. And we were like, dude, you're really good at this. And you know, we just became closer pals with him, ended up making like the Gehenna Gaming trio, and then just got more and more serious about what we were doing. You know, we realized there are so many different other horror games that we all loved, and there were more on the horizon. Kult was coming out. We started buying the books, studying them, trying to run the best games we could, and you know, the Discord community and my social butterflyness on Twitter, and trying to be as open and friendly and welcoming to the people, especially as V5 and LA by Night was coming out. We just built this crazy positive Discord community that's still going now. It's like 600 people strong. And that really helped us get our motivation and the drive to continue doing what we're doing. And since then, you know, we talked about it recently, we basically had, you know, a lot of things that we've always cared about have now become core things that we put into our business plan. Inclusivity, diversity, consent in gaming, and like now even partnering with Ohana Group with using tabletop gaming as means of therapy. I mean, there are things that we all cared about that we didn't realize were like in such need or high demand that we're now focusing on, and people are liking it, they're respecting it, and they want to play with us, and that's fantastic. So we hope to continue to promote those things, have quality game streams, introduce more people to these awesome games, and more importantly, get them behind the screen or get them at a table to play. It's all about playing and enjoying this hobby, but also feeling comfortable with who you are and knowing that everyone there accepts you.
That's pretty beautiful. And
that's good, man.
Yeah, that's interesting. and we've grown several members strong. You know, whether it be me, whether it be you, obviously Dan, Bran, and just everyone else, our lovely mod team, all our regulars, you know, that we've kind of grown. And
yeah, we hope to keep on growing too. I mean, COVID definitely changed our plans for the year. We intended on doing a lot more, like having a network of game masters and stores and things like that, and even people that wanted to participate with us on the national level. And you know, we still have those friendships. It's just evolved into something different. We run online cons, and a lot of people, especially the ones that were for charity, we've had a lot of people involved, willing to run games for great causes, and we're lucky. We've got a great network of friends who have their own content streams that we love. So that's a win, right? But yeah, I'm assuming someday we'll bring on even more team members, and hopefully just keep on growing this community, and making this hobby better with less gatekeeping, less toxicity, and just trying to help people through the day. You know, this stream, perfect timing, good distraction, good people watching and talking. It's can't ask for more than that of something that started as a hobby, right?
Well, thank you for everything you did for us, Rick. Thank you for everyone out there watching and enjoying us. Before you go, just Rick, is there anything you wanted to promote? Anything you wanted to plug? What you got going on?
Heck yeah. So I'm doing the Star Trek Adventures horror on Saturday, and I'm going to be super excited. I mentioned my friend who ran Star Trek Adventures for me, which got me back into role-playing heavily. for the second time, and I invited him to come play, and he is super excited to come back and play. He even was like, "Wait, am I running it?" I'm like, "No, I wouldn't invite you to run a set. I mean, you could, but no, I want you to." I'm like, "I want you." Yeah, that'd be a dick move. I'm like, "No, dude, I want you to play. Like, you ran this for me, and you know, it's good to give something back. This is how far I've come because I got back into a hobby that you ran awesome games for, you know, and it got me really invested into it. So he's a great guy. It's going to be fun to have him play with us. Hopefully we can use Star Trek to get people into playing tabletop role-playing games, including horror ones that would never have necessarily played one of these games before. So this is the gateway drug. I'm going to convert these Trekkies into horror fans. I'm going to get them playing Cult, Call of Cthulhu, Vampire. That's my dream. I'm going to mix my chocolate vanilla communities, as people like to say. So yeah, I'm excited for that. And we have a lot of other 7-night one-shots coming down the pipeline. I would like to eventually do a nice D&D one. But yeah, as far as things I want to plug, we have my good friend Nix, the gnome, in chat. And Nix developed a wonderful play-by-post community called Cajun Knights, which is on Discord. Nix is one of the mods, admins, storytellers, along with our friend Junie Von Esch, and some other fine folks. Check them out. We got Rotterdam by Night play-by-posts run by our friends Seraph and Grav. So if those are kind of the games that are your style, you can't get a group together, you don't have camp equipment, whatever. Consider those. They're fun. They got good communities, and it's an interesting way to get some story time role playing in when you're maybe have a tight schedule.
Okay. Well,
also check out Vancouver by Night, who just hopped into chat, because Logan's cool.
Yeah, Vancouver by Night. How you do it?
Well, I mean, you guys know all the other streams. Atlanta, Near Dark. There's lots of great people in the community. Check them out. So, I plug people all day long. I like this community.
Well, that's quite a boatload of people to promote, and I was very happy that you did so. Rick, thank you for being an amazing guest here on the deep dive. Thank you for sitting with me for 6 hours, and thank you for just being absolute chill. And it's always great to interview you, because I just feel like it's just two friends having a nice little chat, and I do appreciate it. It is. That's what it is, exactly. So, from everyone here on the deep dive, you have an amazing rest of your night or day, depending on what time zone you're watching. The world sometimes can be a little tough. Things can get a little crazy out there, but you always have a friend in us. As I keep saying, I love you. We love you. The deep dive and Rest of Gehenna loves you. So you all have a great night. Enjoy this nice little piano. And get ready to get spooked eventually, one way or another, down the pipeline. Catch us back in 2 weeks' time, where our next system we're going to be delving into Kult. It's going to get graphic. It's going to get horrifying. I'm going to have Mark on here, and we're going to be picking his brain. In more ways, literally picking his brain. That's how you do things in Kult. Yeah, also check out Vancouver by Night and the Level Up Dice channel coming on Friday. Shameless plugs, not so shameless when you're friends. All right. Peace out, everyone. Love you all.
Thanks,
like,
everybody.
subscribe. Oh, subscribe to Gehenna Gaming. Donate to the channel, because, you know, you help us out. You know, let me buy better equipment to make this shit look cooler. And keep watching us down the pipeline. Yeah, it's big stuff is coming. This was just year one for us. It's not even the end of the year yet, and we still got a whole loaded schedule. And you know what? Even better? In February, or no, April 6th marks a very special day for me. So we're almost there. Let's keep on trucking. Have a great November, and I'll see you back in 2 weeks' time. Don't go too crazy without me. Bye, everyone.
Later.
Live long and prosper. Thanks, Rick. Thanks for everything.
All right, man. I'm going to
Are you still watching? Are you still watching the deep dive? Even though I said thank you? Well, you know, that's good. Let me tell you about some special things coming. We got a lot of our games are going on VOD. You should definitely check out Brother Wes's Caring Comfort channel, where he's gonna be showing Iron City by Night. But this is where I want to talk about you. This is where I want to talk about everyone else, as it's just me rambling because Rick has gone to bed like he should because he has a great life. Yeah. Been a momentous occasion, and I have a shit ton of more episodes planned. Oh my god, I've gotten the go-ahead to plan so much more. How awesome is that? So if you got a suggestion, if you want to see us tap a certain GM, go and follow me at NoblemanNick, NobleManick. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I'm mostly more active in Twitter. Instagram's more my personal one, but I post stuff in costumes, and I'm pretty cute, so go ahead and give me that follow. I'm a media whore, I know that. So yeah, that's my Twitter. Oh, you guys are still here? Shit, I'm gonna run out of things to talk about. Yeah, we got some cool guests hopefully lined up. I haven't asked them yet, but I'm sure they'll say yeah. That's how we go. Also, Gehenna's great. You're great. All right, have a good night. Like you thought I wasn't gone? I'm not. I'm here with you, buddies. I'm here for you to the end. So, rest your weary head. Try not to think about the bad stuff in the world, and